The Demon King Piers lay in the dirt, bleeding, unable to understand his defeat. His legendary black flames could not even scratch the heroes, yet the hero's sword had pierced straight through his scales and into his heart. Piers had done everything exactly as the Demon King standard taught. He built a tower, kidnapped princesses, and carefully nurtured heroes, so their anger and sorrow would grow stronger before he devoured them. He believed that the stronger the hero, the greater the feast. To him, world domination was only a matter of time. But the hero laughed at him. He revealed the cruel truth. The towers, the kidnapped princesses, the monsters in villages. It was all just a system designed for heroes to train and level up. Demon Kings were nothing more than bosses in a giant hunting ground. Humiliated and furious, Piers tried to unleash his final power. But the hero cut off his head before he could act. In his final moments, he cursed the foolish standards he once followed. Then suddenly he woke up. Piers realized he had returned 15 years into the past, to his graduation day at the Demon King Academy. This time he refused to follow the rules. At the Demon Academy's graduation ceremony, Piers shocked everyone by openly rejecting the sacred Demon King standards. His words sounded like a direct insult to demon tradition. Furious, Archduke Arcane Blair slammed his hand down and nearly ordered Piers' execution. Yet Piers was too valuable to lose. He had always been the Academy's most talented and disciplined student. Instead of killing him, the Archduke offered one final choice: apologize to the entire demon world or be exiled to the deadly dimension known as Aaron. The moment Aaron was mentioned, the hall filled with anxious whispers. Aaron was infamous for swallowing countless demon kings every year. But Piers showed no hesitation. He immediately accepted the punishment and stepped into the portal. As he fell through it, Piers realized something important. In his previous life, he had already died in Aaron at the hands of its heroes. Back then, his blind faith in the demon standards had led him straight into a trap. This time, he refused to repeat the same mistake. He landed safely in the frozen Irgust Mountains and decided to use the rules to his own advantage instead of obeying them. Meanwhile, his loyal assistant Gordon Derrick arrived at the mountains. Confused and frightened by everything that had happened, Gordon still believed strongly in the demon standards and insisted they should follow the traditional steps, beginning with building a tower and kidnapping a royal to create emotional energy. Piers agreed to build the tower, but ignored the rest of the rules. After activating the tower with his blood, he revealed a shocking truth. Humans in Aaron had already learned how demon towers worked, and were using the standards as weapons to kill demon kings. Later, when Gordon suggested kidnapping a powerful princess from the nearby kingdom of Kororsen, Piers made a completely different decision. He chose a distant kingdom and targeted its 13th princess, a girl with almost no influence. When Piers finally appeared in her room and declared his purpose, the princess did something unexpected. Instead of screaming in fear, she simply laughed. Instead of recoiling in terror, the princess met Deaz's stare head-on. There was a daring quality in her expression, as though she were quietly evaluating whether this so-called demon king possessed the stature to claim her. Her boldness unsettled him. For an instant, he questioned whether she regarded the title of demon king as something insignificant. Nevertheless, he responded with steady assurance, grounded in absolute confidence in his own strength. What troubled him more than her audacity was her acceptance. She submitted to the situation with an ease that felt rehearsed, as if being carried off by a demon king had always existed among the possible turns of her fate. Her calm demeanor gnawed at him. Suspicion rose, and he pressed her intentions. Wary of hidden schemes, she dismantled his doubts with simple logic, asserting that a princess is raised with the understanding that abduction is never beyond possibility. When he warned her against deception, mindful that his own position was already precarious, and that he would not allow himself to be outmaneuvered, she countered with irrefutable reasoning. She could not have prepared a trap for a demon king, whose arrival had been entirely unforeseen. Her argument left no visible flaw, yet unease lingered in his thoughts. Before he could pursue the matter further, she extended her hand, signaling readiness to depart. Deaz seized her and ascended into the sky, returning to his fortress concealed within the Urust Mountains. Gordon awaited them at the stronghold's entrance, tension written across his face. Rather than consigning the princess to the dungeon, Deaz ordered her escorted to the 4th floor, granting this small privilege in recognition of her compliance. Gordon obeyed but requested a private audience, citing an urgent concern. Alone on the tower's 4th level, the princess settled onto the bare stone floor and accepted the reality of her captivity. The chamber was stark and unwelcoming, stripped of the luxuries and attendants she had known since childhood. No garden softened the space, no silk draped the walls, yet within the emptiness, she allowed herself the faintest smile, concluding that her circumstances were not unbearable. Meanwhile, Gordon presented Deas with a formal summons from the Tower of Monsters. The message announced a grand gathering, intended to acknowledge the emergence of a new Demon King. Deas interpreted it as a thinly veiled assertion of dominance. Demon Kings were creatures of pride who rarely cooperated, but Aaron's deteriorating condition had forced an uneasy coordination among them. Though he felt only disdain, Deas resolved to attend. He admitted to himself that he had once dismissed the others as inconsequential. Current events, however, demanded engagement. Deep within a dense forest stood the Tower of Monsters. There Deas encountered Draxon, who had ruled the tower for 7 decades. Draxon's contempt was evident from the outset. He regarded the newcomer as unimpressive, and chastised him for disregarding long-established customs. Deas answered the scorn with indifference, urging him to dispense with theatrics and reveal the true purpose of the assembly. The explanation followed. Draxon disclosed that Archduke Arcane had assigned him to observe Deas's conduct. In response, Deas openly mocked the Archduke, implying that exile to Aaron had done nothing to temper his arrogance. The insult stirred Draxon's temper, prompting him to attempt a humiliating display, meant to diminish the new Demon King. Deas did not waver. Instead, he questioned whether Draxon truly comprehended the gravity of the situation. When accused of violating sacred traditions, he reminded his rival that those same laws forbade Demon Kings from slaying one another. To underscore the point, he drove his heel into the floor and shattered it effortlessly. The overwhelming force of the act silenced Draxon, making it unmistakably clear that he had misjudged Deas's power. Struggling to reclaim authority, Draxon reiterated the Archduke's directive. A princess was to be abducted, and a formal report submitted within the span of a month. Deas revealed that he had already fulfilled that requirement, and hinted that the princess he had taken suited him well. His declaration only deepened Draxon's confusion. Without offering further explanation, Deas turned his back on the gathering and departed the tower. Upon returning to his own domain, Gordon praised his master's commanding display at the Tower of Monsters. Deas brushed aside the commendation, believing Draxon would hesitate to escalate the conflict further. Even so, he cautioned against complacency. Vigilance was essential. He instructed Gordon to keep the princess under close watch and assess what benefit she might yield. In solitude, however, his certainty faltered. The thought of rival Demon Kings forming an alliance weighed heavily on him. Should they unite, even his formidable strength might not suffice. Defying long-standing customs had carried greater consequences than anticipated. Yet he knew he would not choose differently. Bowing to those he despised was inconceivable. Destruction was preferable to submission. His strategy remained straightforward: rebuild everything from the ground up. Having assumed he had captured a minor princess, he expected only a modest gain in energy. That expectation shattered when he consulted his system panel. The total surpassed 13,000 points, an absurd figure, far beyond what a lesser princess should provide. The discrepancy defied reason. Before he could fully process its meaning, a recorded transmission arrived from the Tower of Monsters. Draxon appeared once more, his demeanor utterly transformed. The earlier hostility had dissolved into courtesy and admiration. He extended congratulations, presented a gift, and spoke of Deas's actions in Aaron, as though they revealed a depth and foresight previously unrecognized. The abrupt shift in tone felt deliberate and deeply suspicious. He had no opportunity to dwell on it. Gordon rushed in, visibly shaken, reporting a crisis on the 4th floor. Deas hurried there and stopped cold at the threshold. The barren chamber had been utterly transformed. Blossoms blanketed the floor, butterflies drifted lazily through the air, and a complete, self-sustaining ecosystem flourished within the tower's stone confines. Elemental spirits circled the princess, who stood serenely at the heart of the phenomenon. Such a feat was possible only for someone who commanded all 4 elemental forces simultaneously. Across the continent, only one spirit elementalist possessed that rare mastery. Understanding struck him at once. The girl he had abducted was not the 13th princess as he had believed. With composed certainty, she revealed her true identity, Hilderin, the kingdom's first princess. The repercussions unfolded without delay. News of her capture reached the royal palace within hours. The king's fury knew no restraint, as he vowed vengeance upon the Demon King bold enough to seize his beloved daughter. Commands were issued immediately. The kingdom's greatest champions were summoned, and the full might of the royal army was mobilized, prepared to march and reclaim their princess at any cost. Hilderin redirected Deas to the question she had raised before, pressing him to consider whether he truly possessed the ability to handle her. What had seemed like idle curiosity was, in truth, a veiled warning. Deas admitted that her delicate demeanor had never fooled him. Well before their encounter, whispers had circulated about a gifted elemental witch whose mana reserves were said to defy logic. Strength of that scale could not simply disappear. What intrigued him was not the existence of her power, but the flawless way she had concealed it. She answered by revealing the ring she wore, an heirloom of the royal family crafted to suppress and mask magical energy. With her true identity now uncovered, she questioned whether he would reconsider his decision and return her to the palace. Deas dismissed the notion outright. Sending her back would make him a laughingstock among demon kings, diminish the fear that fueled his authority, and cripple his capacity to harvest the demonic energy born from terror. No matter the fallout, he would not relinquish her. At that very instant, the system detected a violent surge of hostility directed toward him. The intensity of the emotion caused his demonic energy to spike past 19,000 points. The implication required no explanation. The kingdom had realized she was gone and had traced the act to him. Whether she had been the first princess or the 13th no longer mattered. The world now recognized her as his captive. Within the royal palace, the king's fury erupted. He commanded that the demon king be slain and his daughter restored to him. Yet confusion lingered beneath the outrage. The court had not confirmed the kidnapper's identity. Scouts were dispatched, and advisors urged patience until reliable intelligence could be gathered. The king rejected their caution, denouncing hesitation and demanding immediate retaliation. One advisor recalled a recent catastrophe in a neighboring land, where a demon king of lust had abducted a prince. That reckless act had united several nations and ultimately led to the demon's destruction at the hands of heroes. The parallel was troubling. It seemed irrational for another demon king to provoke the same outcome. Gradually, the council reached a sobering conclusion. A new demon king must have emerged. Their deliberation was cut short by urgent news. Traces of teleportation magic had been discovered, leading north toward the Irgust Mountains. Shock spread through the chamber. Their kingdom lay far in the south, while those mountains rose in the distant north. High within his tower, Gordon expressed concern about the prospect of Hilderin's forces marching against them. Deas remained unshaken. He had already calculated the obstacles. The sheer distance posed a formidable barrier. The path required crossing multiple sovereign states, each protective of its borders and political interests. No ruler would willingly allow a foreign army to pass unchecked. Treacherous terrain and territorial disputes rendered the journey nearly impossible. The only viable alternative would be hiring a heroes' guild. With few options, the king sanctioned contact with the guild. At its headquarters, unease spread as soon as the Irgust Mountains were mentioned. The region's reputation was grim. It teemed with monstrous creatures. For most mercenaries, accepting such a mission equated to signing their own death warrants. As Deas had predicted, fighters driven by coin and self-preservation would not embrace near-certain doom. The mountain's infamy had been precisely why he chose them as his base. Gordon found himself marveling at his master's foresight. Deas's grasp of Aaron's geography, politics, and human instincts seemed almost unnatural, as though he possessed knowledge beyond ordinary means. Back at the palace, the king's temper flared again upon learning that no hero had volunteered. The refusal of so-called champions to rescue his daughter filled him with contempt. An advisor attempted to calm him, explaining that in the Aaron region, heroes functioned as profit-minded contractors who selected only battles that promised survival and reward. In his tower, Deas examined the system marketplace. The offerings tempted him. Skeletal soldiers could be purchased for 10,000 points each, and there were enhancements available to mitigate dimensional interference. Yet constructing a formidable army through such means would demand vast time and energy. Leaning back upon his throne, he confronted a sobering reality. His current reserves were insufficient to withstand a united assault by seasoned heroes. An unwelcome trace of fear resurfaced, echoing memories of frailty from a previous existence. To overcome that limitation, he ordered Gordon to contact Draxon immediately. His proposal was bold. He intended to trade demonic energy for human currency. Gordon was stunned. Demonic energy was the core of their evolution, the force enabling summoning and transcendence beyond racial constraints. Converting it into gold seemed reckless. Deas remained resolute. Draxon would pay handsomely, and without that capital, preparations for the looming conflict would be impossible. His focus shifted to the fortress city of Holton near the Irgust Mountains, where he planned to invest the proceeds. Disguised as a solitary mercenary, Deas approached Holton's gates alone. The guards regarded him with mocking suspicion, amused that a single warrior would venture toward such perilous territory. Rather than argue, he flicked a gold coin to the ground before them. Their demeanor changed instantly when he indicated they could split the coin among themselves. The gates opened without delay. Inside the city, he recognized his need for local insight. His search brought him to the Crimson Falcon Mercenary Guild, whose members lounged in casual conversation. Some spoke of relocating soon, but their leader dismissed the idea. In his estimation, the situation was advantageous. Soldiers would battle monsters, and mercenaries could reap rewards afterward with minimal danger. Rumors of a new demon king in the mountains surfaced amid their chatter. Prompting laughter, they deemed it absurd, arguing that demon kings typically established their towers where heroes could reach them. Even the tale of Princess Hildurin's abduction was scoffed at. Crossing an entire continent for such an act seemed implausible. They noted that the Heroes Guild had already declined involvement once the Irgust Mountains were named. To them, the story was a fabrication meant to inflate bounties. Their leader concluded that greed often clouded judgment. Without warning, Deas materialized behind the leader. The room stiffened in shock as the mercenaries faced the unexpected intruder. Observing their familiarity with current affairs, he decided they would be useful. He instructed all but one to leave. They answered with steel and violence. Perceiving him as a threat, the clash that followed was swift and merciless. Deas dismantled their attacks effortlessly. A strike from behind was intercepted with precision. A massive hammer swung toward him, halted mid-arc. Seized by his overwhelming strength, surrounded by crossbows, he advanced without hesitation, hurling one attacker into the others and shattering their formation. Terror overtook the leader. The figure before him no longer appeared human. Outside the building, confusion spread among those who remained conscious, unable to comprehend why exhaustion never seemed to touch their opponent. When silence finally fell, only the leader stood. Deas advanced at an unhurried pace, his presence alone crushing resistance. He offered survival in exchange for information. Paralyzed by fear, the leader accepted immediately. The inquiry was direct. Deas demanded the location of the slave market. He was escorted to a formidable structure concealed behind a towering iron gate. The establishment dealt in human slaves, a fact relayed with uncertainty. Deas instead asked about rarer stock and dropped a heavy pouch of gold at their feet. Apprehension gave way to avarice. The leader's manner shifted as he guided Deas into a hidden sector. Along the descent, Deas reflected on how swiftly the man had regained composure after witnessing his companion's fall. The observation reinforced a quiet conclusion. Humans and demons were not fundamentally different. One pursued gold, the other devoured energy. Beneath the city, in shadowed chambers, the true merchandise awaited. Gordon had once questioned the value of human currency. The answer was evident now. Deas sought slaves of non-human races captured by mankind. His interest centered on an elf, renowned for incorruptible integrity, an individual he intended to employ as a subtle instrument to fracture the unity of heroes from within. Meanwhile, within the royal court, a new figure arrived. The hero Hillen Cargill stepped forward. The king greeted him with visible relief. Entrusting him with his hopes, Hillen accepted the charge without hesitation, vowing to rescue the princess and return bearing the demon king's head as proof that justice had been served. At the slave market, the broker inquired about the type of commodity Deas sought. Deas answered plainly, a captured elf. He added that the mercenary who had escorted him would be responsible for payment. The mercenary stared at him in stunned disbelief, but one glacial glance from Deas extinguished any protest. Swallowing his fear, he resigned himself to the transaction. Deas then ordered everyone to remain outside, claiming he required privacy to evaluate the merchandise. The trader cautioned that the elf was difficult to manage. Deas replied evenly that any damage caused during inspection would be repaid, should matters escalate. Once alone, he examined the captive carefully. The elf who stood before him had clearly once carried pride and dignity, yet chains and degradation had reduced him to a shadow of that former self. The oppressive aura of demonic power radiating from Deas did not go unnoticed. The elf sensed it immediately, and unease mixed with disbelief at the thought of a demon taking interest in him. Deas presented a proposition, a chance to exact revenge upon humanity. The elf admitted that the offer held temptation, but he voiced his distrust without hesitation. In his experience, demons were no more trustworthy than humans. Both races had brought suffering upon his people. The terms were laid out with precision. 50 years of service in exchange for liberation and protection. To a race blessed with centuries of life, half a century was a small price compared to endless humiliation in chains. Still, the elf refused. Demons, he argued, sought the destruction of the world tree, the sacred heart of elven faith and the foundation of natural balance. Trusting one was inconceivable. Deas acknowledged the gravity of that fear. Then he invoked the ancient covenant of demonkind and swore he would never harm the world tree. Among demons, such an oath was absolute. In return, he demanded that the elf, Granada of the Maple tribe, swear 50 years of loyalty upon the name of the world tree itself. Granada found the entire exchange deeply unsettling. He agreed to consider it, but only if he could face the demon king supposedly backing such promises. In response, Deas revealed his identity. Granada reacted with scornful disbelief. A true demon king, he insisted, would not personally attend a slave auction, nor wander far from his tower where his strength diminished. Mockingly, he escalated the wager, declaring he would serve 100 years instead of 50 if proof were given. The next instant, reality fractured. Granada found himself standing on the 5th floor of a towering fortress. The shift left no room for denial. Deas calmly reminded him of the century he had just pledged. Shock gave way to scrutiny. Granada's eyes swept over the surroundings, and criticism quickly followed. The tower appeared stark and underdeveloped, its lower levels sparsely populated. One floor below was overtaken by uncontrolled overgrowth. Lacking fortifications, in Granada's judgment, such a structure could not endure even a single determined hero. It would not survive a year. He refused to tie his fate to what looked like inevitable collapse. Without raising his voice, Deas released a suffocating wave of demonic pressure. The force crushed down upon Granada, erasing any lingering doubt. The memory of the contract surged back into his mind. This was no pretender. This was a genuine demon king. As the pressure subsided, Granada noticed another detail. The tower stood amid a region infamous for catastrophic-level monsters, yet none dared approach. The only explanation was fear. The creatures of the Irgust Mountains avoided this place, because they recognized the ruler who dwelled within. Acceptance settled over him. Granada lowered his head and pledged 100 years of loyalty in the name of the great world tree. Even as he spoke the oath, he assumed his service would involve some grim undertaking through which he might eventually avenge his suffering. Instead, Deas issued an unexpectedly mundane command. Granada was told to prepare a meal. He froze, struggling to comprehend the instruction. Rather than plotting devastation, the Demon King expected him to cook. Soon he found himself in the kitchen, slicing vegetables with mechanical precision, while questioning the absurdity of his circumstances. Princess Hildurin joined him without hesitation, assisting with cheerful ease as if they were in an ordinary household, rather than a demon's stronghold. Before long, an elaborate feast filled the dining hall on the 5th floor. All gathered at the table, Granada, still unsettled, cautiously inquired about the young woman's identity. Learning that she was Hildurin, first princess of the kingdom, sent another wave of shock through him. The conclusion was obvious: she had been abducted. Doubt crept back into his thoughts. He again questioned how such an unfortified tower could withstand the hero who would inevitably come. Deas showed no concern. Granada was instructed to sit and eat. It was then revealed that his purchase had not been for cruelty or sacrifice, but for his extraordinary culinary skill. As the princess smiled serenely across the table, Granada sat among them, overwhelmed by the surreal truth that the Demon King valued his cooking above torment. When the meal ended, Granada began to speculate about his actual responsibilities. He assumed he would be stationed on the 4th floor to intercept invading heroes. Deas dismissed the notion immediately. If enemies reached that depth, it would already signify catastrophic failure, as they would have crossed the deadly Irgust Mountains. Instead, Deas unveiled his true strategy. Granada would infiltrate human society as a covert agent, sowing discord from within, before entrusting him with such a task. However, his strength needed evaluation. Sensing an opportunity, Granada agreed to a test. The conditions were strict. Deas would fight using only one hand and refrain from employing demonic energy. If Granada emerged victorious, 50 years would be erased from his century-long oath. Confidence flared, and he accepted without hesitation. Their clash unfolded with blinding speed. Deas noted that Granada's technique remained refined despite years of enslavement. He even considered that prolonged exposure to the mana-rich fourth floor may have sharpened the elf's physical and magical aptitude in ways unique to his kind. Granada responded with formidable magic, releasing power far exceeding that of an ordinary elf. He made clear that underestimation would be fatal. Vines and roots burst forth through summoned magic, binding one of Deas's legs. For a fleeting instant, victory seemed attainable. Convinced his opponent stood vulnerable, Granada committed fully to a decisive strike. In that same heartbeat, an overwhelming authority descended upon him. The sheer presence of the being before him shattered his certainty. Deas reaffirmed that he would honor his restriction and refrain from unleashing his true power. Even so, the duel ended in an instant. A single devastating blow brought Granada to the ground, leaving no ambiguity in the outcome. The scene shifted to Holton Walk, headquarters of the Crimson Falcon mercenaries. This time, Deas was received with respect rather than suspicion. He declared his intention to retain their services for a full year. Their captain agreed readily, focused only on compensation. One member silently bristled at how easily their leader deferred to the same man who had once crushed them. Any lingering unease dissolved when Deas placed a heavy pouch of gold before them as advance payment. Their enthusiasm surged, and pledges of loyalty followed. Privately, the captain contemplated the possibility of replacing his men later, if necessity demanded it. Deas then instructed them to accept the individual beside him as a new member of their ranks. This man would serve as the conduit for his directives. Initial reluctance faded when Granada stepped forward and introduced himself. His bruised and swollen face spoke volumes, recognizing that he too had been humbled by Deas's overwhelming strength. The mercenaries felt a strange sense of solidarity. Shared defeat forged an unexpected bond. Observing them, Deas reflected that while they appeared ordinary, they were seasoned veterans of the Urust region, and not easily substituted. He also recalled that only one hero had answered the Hildurin Kingdom's call, Hillen Cargill, famed for slaying the demon king of lust. Now acting as their employer, Deas assigned their first task. They were to gather intelligence and uncover every detail about Hillen Cargill, who currently stood in service to Hildurin. The mercenaries responded with firm resolve, declaring complete obedience. With the initial pieces in motion, Deas departed for his tower, already calculating the next stage of his design. After entrusting responsibility for monitoring the hero to Granada, Deas concluded that it was time to focus on his own advancement. Every reserve of demonic energy that might have strengthened either himself or the tower had already been exhausted. With no points remaining to invest, only one path to growth remained. His thoughts turned to the Soul Flower, a rare mana crystal born from centuries of absorbing pure natural energy. Consuming one could grant extraordinary power. The Irst Mountains stood out as the ideal hunting ground. Violent mana storms and catastrophic monsters had long kept humans at bay, leaving the region untouched. In that isolation, Soul Flowers would have drawn in untainted natural mana for countless years. To Deas, the mountains resembled a hidden treasury sealed away from the world. Even if their power could not rival demonic energy, it was far preferable to stagnation. When he prepared to depart, Gordon voiced concern. Searching without a precise method of detection would be like combing through a vast field for a single grain of sand. Worse, the monsters roaming the mountains would seize any weakness. Deas dismissed the threat of beasts. Combat posed no issue, he conceded. However, that without advanced mana-sensing techniques, locating the flowers would prove extraordinarily difficult. Their exchange was interrupted by a light knock. Princess Armin peeked inside. A small blue slime perched atop her head, asking if they were busy. Both Deas and Gordon were momentarily startled by the sight. Moments later, she ran off again, laughing as she played among the elemental spirits that now drifted freely throughout the tower. She reminded Deas of his promise to allow her to decorate the fourth floor as she pleased. To his astonishment, she had already transformed the once barren level into a vibrant sanctuary reflecting her tastes. He found it both absurd and strangely compelling that a princess would enthusiastically remodel the stronghold of a demon king. With a shy smile, Armin confessed she had never imagined she would be permitted beyond the tower's walls. Yet she was glad she had followed him. Without offering explanation, Deas lifted her into his arms, instructed her to hold tightly, and launched skyward before she could react. They cut through the air at tremendous speed. From high above, she gazed down in silent wonder. The rising sun cast gold across the clouds, and the vastness of the world unfolded beneath them. For the first time, she saw how expansive everything truly was. Her thoughts drifted to the palace, where each day had mirrored the last, magic training. Royal lessons, rigid expectations. She had once assumed that routine would define her entire existence. Now soaring above the Irst mountains, she felt she was witnessing something uniquely her own. Deas broke through her reverie and reminded her of the reason for the journey. She asked him to call her by name, reasoning that they would be spending considerable time together. He agreed, but warned her sharply not to forget her status. Failure to assist him in locating soul flowers, he cautioned, would result in confinement underground. She apologized quickly and summoned her water and wind spirits to begin scanning the land. Though he anticipated a lengthy search, Deas knew her elemental assistance would far outpace any solitary effort. Unexpectedly, Armin cried out that she had discovered something. He descended toward the indicated location and immediately noticed monsters clustered around a single bloom. Others had sensed it first. Massive shapes emerged from the snow and stone, members of a demonic race that had strayed from their native realm. As their king, Deas ordered them to withdraw and leave the flower untouched. They rejected his command outright, declaring their hatred for demons and their intent to kill him. A cold, humorless laugh escaped him. Gordon's warnings about monster hostility had been correct. Expecting reason had been naive. He resolved to erase them. The creatures lunged forward in fury, determined to defend what they believed belonged to them. The mountains echoed with shrieks as flames erupted across the battlefield. One monster shouted for the others to eliminate the weakest target, Armin, and they surged toward her. They never reached her. Deas unleashed searing fire that incinerated them instantly. Armin remained steady, recalling how ogres could be defeated through coordinated assaults by Bull Tribe orcs. Yet here the attackers could not even approach. Then Deas released a massive surge of demonic energy. Its destructive force swept across the area, reducing everything to smoldering ruin within moments. When the blaze subsided, only he remained standing amid charred remains. Armin stared at him in awe, excitement flickering in her eyes. He remarked dryly that humans rarely comprehend true power until they see it firsthand. Soon after, she sensed an intense and pristine aura emanating from beneath the snow. A ruby-colored spiritual flower lay hidden there, saturated with water and ice mana. As she gazed at it, Deas warned her not to grow greedy. He promised that if she located additional flowers, one would be hers as reward. Motivated by that assurance, she searched tirelessly until exhaustion overtook her. No other blooms revealed themselves. They returned to the tower, reflecting on Armin's true identity as the first princess of Hildurin. Deas murmured that what once seemed an error in judgment might prove to be a remarkable asset. Gordon soon arrived, bearing urgent intelligence from Granada. The hero Hillen Cargill had departed the capital, accompanied by 32 other heroes. However, they were not advancing directly toward the Irst Mountains. Instead, they were following the conventional hero's path, recruiting allies, accepting quests from villages, and steadily strengthening themselves along the way. Gordon presented several contingency plans for defending the tower. Deas glanced at them and casually discarded the proposals, leaving Gordon stunned. He declared that no monsters or traps would be placed to hinder the hero's journey. Weak obstacles, he reasoned, only sharpened heroes further. Granada was to ensure that the mercenaries accompanied the heroes, gradually earning their trust. Gordon once again observed that his master's thinking defied common sense. With their present defenses, he questioned how they could possibly withstand the coming assault. Deas replied that the tower would indeed be fortified, but through the expertise of a dwarf. Gordon protested vehemently. Housing a dwarf alongside a human princess and an elf would invite ridicule. Deas dismissed the concern. The value lay not in the dwarf himself, but in the advanced weaponry forged through dwarven craftsmanship. He then outlined his vision. Heroes traditionally expected the first floor of a demon king's tower to be guarded by weak creatures. This time, they would instead face ranks of cannons. Understanding dawned on Gordon at once. Such an assault would catch the heroes completely unprepared. He admitted, almost incredulously, that the strategy defied every established convention. Suddenly, panic seized him. Another abduction had just occurred. Far away, in the underground dwarf city of Wolfnit, Lager Friedrich, the greatest blacksmith among the dwarves, continued refining his craft. unaware that he had become the next target in the rebellious Demon King's expanding design. The focus moves to Volfner, the great dwarven city carved in stone. Piers enters the metropolis concealed in disguise, though he remembers battling countless dwarves before his regression. This marks the first occasion he has ever set foot inside their homeland. He makes his way into an establishment known as Midnight Inn. Once inside, he hands over a sum of money to a man and explains that he has come seeking to commission a weapon but lacks knowledge of where to begin. He asks to be directed to the finest blacksmith in the city. The man pockets the payment and laughs, amused that a human understands how to conduct business so directly. Piers remarks that he has heard dwarves cherish gold just as fiercely as heroes do. With a grin, the man provides instructions. Piers must travel deeper into the city until he finds a massive shaft. There, a lift will take him down after verifying his identification. The system functions as a double-layered safeguard against intruders. He is told to descend to the lowest level and proceed to the innermost chamber, where the greatest blacksmith of Volfner resides, Loger Friedrich. Piers follows those directions precisely and eventually steps into the domain of Loger. Watching the dwarf at work, he observes that the movements of his craft make it appear as though Mana itself is dancing around him. For a brief moment, Piers questions whether this truly is the city's finest smith. A passing thought crosses his mind that abducting the dwarf quietly would simplify matters considerably. He reaches out to place a hand on Loger's shoulder. Before contact is made, Loger senses him. The hammer rises in an instant, and a violent aura erupts from the dwarf's body. The force overwhelms Piers and hurls him backward. In that instant, he realizes that the faint trace of demonic energy he carries has been detected. He begins to wonder whether this dwarf is more formidable than expected. Loger charges, hammer poised to crush. Piers catches the weapon mid-swing and identifies Loger as a hero. Loger boldly affirms his identity, declaring himself Loger Friedrich, a blacksmith who wields the power of heroes, and condemns the intruding demon for daring to enter dwarven territory. Piers merely smiles and states that Loger will not leave the city alive. He observes that for all his bluster, the dwarf is rather weak. He then clarifies that he is not merely a demon, but a demon king. As those words settle, he seizes Loger by the throat, and the dwarf struggles for breath. The disturbance draws soldiers to the workshop. They call out to Loger and apologize for interrupting, asking about the sudden noise. Within moments, they realize he has vanished. Panic spreads as they announce the presence of an intruder and the abduction of Loger. Orders are given to seal all exits and conduct a full search of the facility. Disbelief evident in their urgency, the scene shifts upward, revealing Piers holding Loger high above. He warns him that any sound will result in instant death. Loger speculates that a demon king could only have come for the dwarven princess. Piers dismisses that assumption as irrelevant. Loger refuses to believe him. Piers mentions that dwarven blacksmiths are rumored to carve hidden tunnels underground for emergencies. Tears well in Loger's eyes as he clenches his teeth. Convinced the princess is the true target, he curses his fate, reflecting bitterly that he had lived quietly until now because he lacked the courage to confront demon kings. Now calamity has found him regardless. It becomes clear that Loger's strength is far less than his title suggests. Piers notes that extracting information will not be simple. He proposes an alternative. Loger may guide him to the underground passage, after which the princess will be taken and Loger released. Shock overtakes Loger as he considers the implication. The idea of a hero sacrificing the princess to save himself would destroy his standing among the dwarves. He imagines the rumors spreading and the altered gazes of his people. Distress overwhelms him, and he curses the Demon King's cruelty. He realizes that his weakness is already known. If such a rumor circulates, it will be readily believed. The thought of endless torture terrifies him. Piers presents him with a stark choice: betray the princess or walk willingly beside him. Privately, Piers is certain Loger will choose survival over suffering. He offers assurance that cooperation will guarantee safety, swearing upon the standards revered by demon kings. To Loger, those standards represent an unbreakable code of faith among demon kings. A vow sworn upon it should never be violated. With that reasoning, he makes his decision. A dramatic smile spreads across his face as he agrees to lead the demon king through the underground route. Piers remarks that the expression makes him ill. Back at Loger's workshop, his absence is noted. Knights scour the premises. Nearby stands Princess Liui's Werft of the Dwarven Kingdom, clad in an unusual dress. Tears stream down her face as she wonders where Lojer has gone while crafting her weapon. A knight explains that they suspect he has been kidnapped. Liyue angrily rejects the notion, insisting that a hero cannot be abducted. The knight carefully clarifies that, although Lojer is indeed a hero, his primary skill lies in blacksmithing rather than combat. Liyue silences him again, and demands that the kidnapper be found and brought before her immediately. The knight accepts her command. Her tone darkens as she warns that failure will cost them dearly. The knight once again affirms his loyalty. The narrative returns to Lojer's secret tunnel. He leads Piers through a cramped passage, crawling ahead while Piers follows closely behind. The narrowness forces Piers to stare at Lojer's broad backside the entire time, an irritation that steadily grows. He complains about the prolonged view. Lojer, frightened, explains that the passage leaves no alternative and insists they are nearly at the end. Piers orders him to move faster regardless. At last, Lojer emerges from the tunnel and brings Piers before a castle. He announces that his responsibility ends there. He has revealed the underground path. From this point onward, Piers must proceed alone. Piers' expression turns cold as he dismisses Lojer's reasoning. The trembling dwarf reminds him of the vow sworn upon the Demon King's standards, the promise of safety in exchange for help. Piers responds with a smirk, dismissing the oath as meaningless and stating he does not care for it. Tears stream down Lojer's face as he questions what kind of Demon King stands before him. Piers contemplates what to do next. Lojer, overwhelmed with regret, thinks he should have simply betrayed the princess from the start. Lowering his head, he insists on his value. No one surpasses him in metallurgy. He claims he can forge any weapon desired, and offers even to act as a spy. Survival, above all else, has become his guiding principle. Piers observes the irony of a hero, offering service to a demon king. Lojer maintains there is nothing strange about it, and urges him to make use of him however he pleases. Piers declares that if Lojer swears allegiance, mercy will be granted. Gratitude pours from Lojer as he praises the greatness of the demon king. Yet inwardly he labels Piers a fool, convinced he will never truly obey. He vows that once free, he will assemble a pursuit force and make the Demon King regret this decision for the rest of his life. The setting shifts once more. Piers transports Lojer to Burge's tower on the 4th floor. The dwarf stands frozen in shock. Burge reacts in fear, astonished that the Demon King has brought not only a dwarf, but a hero dwarf. Piers commands silence. Hillen establishes contact, announcing he has a report, but he too is startled by the presence of the dwarf. Piers orders him to deliver the report later. The princess addresses Lojer, wondering whether he has come as her rescuer, though she doubts it. Confusion overwhelms Lojer as he questions why he has been brought there, reminding Piers of the earlier promise. Piers calmly states that no release was ever guaranteed. Mercy was promised and mercy has been given. Lojer remains alive. Lojer struggles to understand how he arrived. Piers explains that he rendered him unconscious and carried him there, judging it the safest course given the uncertainty of Lojer's intentions. Unexpectedly, Lojer bursts into laughter, overcome with joy. Piers questions whether he is truly so pleased to serve as a subordinate. Tears of happiness stream down Lojer's face as he confirms his delight. Piers approves of the attitude and assigns him his task. When Lojer asks what it entails, Piers reveals his command. A vast array of cannons must be installed on the 1st floor, prepared to annihilate the heroes. The scene began at the preparation station for the heroes' campaign. A holographic communication channel activated, and Granada appeared to deliver his latest report. With steady composure, he explained that rumors were spreading rapidly among the hero factions. Intelligence suggested that the newly risen Demon King wielded black flames. In response, many heroes had begun equipping fire-resistant armor and weapons, anticipating a confrontation shaped by that element. Granada added another development. A separate rumor claimed that the Demon King had refrained from unleashing demonic beasts because he was afraid. Among the heroes, this silence was interpreted not as patience or calculation, but as weakness. Deas listened without visible reaction. His posture remained still, his expression indifferent. When he finally responded, his tone carried cold certainty. The heroes had not yet lost their killing intent. Whether they sought glory through battle or wealth through conquest was irrelevant. None of them would gain what they desired. In time, they would lose everything, even the will to fight. Before ending the transmission, Deas instructed Granada to continue observing the heroes closely and report any changes immediately. The connection ended. Alone, Deas reflected. By withholding demonic beasts, he was quietly draining the heroes' morale and distorting their expectations. Their assumptions would become their weakness. It was becoming clear that he possessed a deep understanding of human psychology. The thought of such a demon king existing unsettled even his own subordinates. Yet for them, one fact remained comforting. Deas was not their enemy. The scene shifted to the interior of Deas's tower. Within its cold stone halls, he issued an order to the blacksmith Lager Friedrich. Fire cannons were to be installed on the tower's first floor. However, one restriction was absolute. Mana stones were forbidden. Lager immediately panicked. Constructing such weapons without mana stones would be nearly impossible, and even if completed, they would be ineffective against heroes. Deas cut him off without raising his voice. Finding a solution was the blacksmith's responsibility. He explained the reasoning. Heroes were favored by the dimension itself, blessed with extraordinary perception of energy. Any trap powered by mana would be detected long before activation. That was precisely why mana could not be used. Lager attempted another protest. Deas's expression darkened as a sphere of black magic formed calmly in his palm. He reminded Lager that he had been brought here because he was considered the greatest blacksmith available. If he failed to perform, replacements were not scarce. Terrified, Lager broke down and revealed an alternative. Years ago, he had developed a device capable of completely concealing mana traces. It had taken 3 years to create, and the prototype remained in his workshop within the dwarf kingdom of Wulfner. Deas demanded confirmation that this was not another excuse. Trembling, Lager swore it was true. After a pause, Deas chose to believe him, but not without insurance. He fastened a purple rune-inscribed collar around Lager's neck. The collar was a magical restraint capable of separating his head from his body instantly, with a single gesture. Additionally, it distorted perception, preventing others from clearly seeing Lager's face. Any attempt to remove it would be interpreted as betrayal and answered with death. Understanding fully, Lager collapsed in fear and vowed never to remove it. Soon after, Deas and Lager departed. They traveled across multiple kingdoms for nearly a month, gathering rare materials and mana-compatible components. Everything was stored carefully within Deas's spatial pocket. When their preparations were complete, they returned to Wulfner. Inside the dwarf capital, chaos reigned. A massive boulder crashed down among a group of dwarves, shattering stone. At the center of the destruction stood Princess Louise Verf, her fury unmistakable. It had been over a month, and Lager still had not been found. She condemned the dwarves' incompetence and demanded results. An elderly dwarf explained nervously that Lager had constructed countless secret tunnels throughout the city. Investigations were ongoing, but it was likely he had already escaped. Louise dismissed the explanation. Escape was obvious. She was certain Lager had been kidnapped. In a sudden burst of violence, she lifted the old dwarf by the face and granted the city 2 weeks. Failure would mean death for all responsible. She then ordered every tunnel Lager had ever built to be collapsed. As soldiers hurried to obey, a hidden wall panel shifted silently behind her. One of Lager's secret passages opened. Louise sensed it instantly and turned. Because of the collar's interference effect, she could not recognize the man who emerged. However, she immediately identified the tunnel. Only Lager knew of its existence. Lager froze in panic, barely managing to address her properly. Louise's fury ignited. Golden aura vines flared around her body. She believed he had hidden himself to avoid forging her weapon. Lager's desperate attempts to deny it only enraged her further. As a princess, she would not tolerate being contradicted. From that moment forward, she declared him her slave, bound to forge weapons for her indefinitely. Before anything else, she would punish him. Her fist surged with golden aura and launched forward. Before impact, a violent blast erupted between them. Louise was thrown backward but quickly stabilized, landing with controlled strength. When the dust cleared, Deas stood calmly before her. He instructed Lager to retrieve the equipment immediately. Louise demanded to know who he was. Deas introduced himself simply as the master of the blacksmith she had attempted to enslave. Enraged, she launched herself at him. The two collided midair, fists striking with terrifying speed. Shockwaves rippled outward with every exchange. During the clash, Deas aimed a kick at her neck. She caught it effortlessly, displaying immense strength. She countered with a brutal strike that launched him into the ceiling. As she turned her focus back to Lager, Deas reappeared, seizing her and slamming her into the ground. Their battle intensified, resembling a confrontation between monsters rather than mortals. Deas recognized her instantly. She was the second daughter of Princess Ver, a figure of extraordinary strength even before his regression. If allowed to grow further, she would become a significant threat. Eliminating her now would be logical, but doing so required unleashing his full demonic power. In his weakened state, that risked exposing his identity to her soldiers. Meanwhile, Logger dismantled a massive mana phantom machine, designed to erase mana traces. It was far larger than expected. Deas demanded completion within 1 minute. Louise's aura flared violently as 12 blazing streams of golden power erupted around her. Deas warned Logger that he would abandon him if necessary. Logger swore he was nearly finished. Both fighters were nearing their limits, their mana reserves collapsing rapidly. Louise declared that Deas would not leave alive, and vowed to cripple Logger so he could never escape again. Deas laughed darkly, remarking that she sounded more like a demon king than he did. He declared his intention to take both the blacksmith and the equipment. At last, Logger completed the dismantling. The flow of mana shifted violently throughout the chamber. Louise prepared to unleash her full strength. Deas moved first, driving a powerful kick into her chest. The impact hurled her into the ground in a violent explosion. Without hesitation, Deas opened his subspace pocket and ordered Logger to move. In an instant, both he and the dismantled machine vanished. Louise rose from the dust, claiming the attack meaningless, only to realize they were gone. Her soldiers arrived moments later. She mocked their slowness and ordered pursuit through the tunnels. Then she remembered the tunnels had already been collapsed. Grinding her teeth, Louise finally accepted the truth. Logger had never intended to return. A cold smile formed as wind swept through the ruined chamber. The situation had become far more interesting than she expected. With burning eyes and a twisted grin, she resolved to hunt him down personally, even if it required searching the entire continent. And when she found him, Logger would pay for everything. Inside the first floor of Breeze J Tower, the Demon King stood before an immense magical construct that dominated the chamber. His stance was composed, his eyes steady as he studied the towering apparatus in silence. This was the mechanism required to halt the advancing heroes. Whatever the cost, it had to be secured and made operational. Behind him, Princess Hildurin of the Hildrin Kingdom stared at the structure in open astonishment, overwhelmed by its enormous scale. Nearby, his loyal subordinate Logger looked equally unsettled, unable to fully grasp the device's purpose. Only moments earlier, he had been tending to routine cleaning when the entire installation had suddenly been set into motion. Now, a reinforced framework stood completed beside the central mechanism. Logger straightened and formally reported that the monopary framework had been fully constructed and successfully installed. The Demon King acknowledged this with a brief nod and ordered immediate activation. Logger obeyed without hesitation. Dark energy poured from the Demon King's body. A violent purple aura erupted outward, flooding the chamber with crushing pressure. After everything required to transport and assemble the device, he expected results, though trembling beneath the oppressive demonic presence. Logger confirmed that activation was already underway. The enchantment finalized with a thunderous roar. Mana surged wildly through the tower as blue lightning coiled around its exterior, illuminating the structure in blinding flashes. Hildurin raised her arm instinctively, shielding her eyes from the overwhelming light. At that moment, a translucent system interface materialized before the Demon King. The tower had recognized the monophone. Synchronization required 10,000 points. He studied the notification with interest, remarking inwardly that the tower possessed more functions than anticipated. A second display revealed his available resources, 11,182 points remaining. Without delay, he authorized synchronization. The system responded instantly. Synchronization completed. 182 points remained. A final message appeared. The monophone now acknowledged the Demon King as its master. Its power source had been fully converted from mana to demonic energy. He lifted his head and called Logger's name. Logger immediately denied interfering in the process. Though excitement radiated from him, he confessed that he had never imagined the monopan could merge with the tower, much less have its energy core completely transformed. The breakthrough, in his view, surpassed even the imagination of the device's original creator. It was nothing short of historic. Princess Hildurin stepped closer, her eyes shining with fascination as she admired the awakened structure. At the Demon King's suggestion, she prepared to test it with a spell. Delighted by the opportunity, she began chanting, Arcane symbols formed in midair as a massive sphere of vibrant magic gathered before her. Logger panicked instantly, protesting that he had only just finished cleaning the tower and begging her not to treat the place like a playground. The Demon King ignored the commotion, focusing instead on the phenomenon itself. A spell of that magnitude should have been detectable far beyond the tower's walls. He moved toward the entrance and looked outside. There was nothing. No trace of magical disturbance escaped the structure. Understanding dawned. A tower synchronized with a monopan completely contained external magical signatures. Curious, he extended his demonic energy and attempted to manipulate the tower directly. His hand shimmered, and in the next instant, the entire tower vanished from existence. A moment later, with another motion, it reappeared exactly as it had been. He realized he could conceal the tower at will and summon it back whenever desired. Though the control felt unstable and difficult to sustain for long, he recognized its immense future value. Outside the inner chamber, Logger's excitement spiraled beyond restraint. He pleaded loudly for permission to examine the device, his enthusiasm escalating into near mania. At one point, he even blurted out a desire to dismantle both the magical apparatus and the tower before hurriedly correcting himself, insisting it would be purely for research. He declared he had never encountered anything comparable in recorded history, and begged for the chance to study what he considered a revolutionary discovery. The Demon King observed him sharply, remarking that he sounded like a warrior thirsting for battle. Yet he could not deny Logger's passion. After a brief pause, he granted conditional approval. If Logger succeeded in completely annihilating the heroes trapped on the first floor, he would be allowed to conduct his research afterward. Crimson energy flared around Logger as he vowed merciless destruction. Without another word, he began chanting, fully immersed in preparation. The Demon King then turned to Princess Hilderin and calmly instructed her to confront the heroes who had reached the fourth floor. She froze, startled by the assignment, and reminding him of her royal status. He responded evenly that she was not merely a princess, but also a gifted spirit who had already chosen not to return to her palace. Even as he spoke, he acknowledged the weight of the request. She was still inexperienced, unfamiliar with the harshness of open conflict against her own kind. Hilderin fell into thought, uncertain which element she should wield, fire or water. He stopped her before she could overthink it. Combat strength was not required. Her task was only to disrupt the heroes and openly declare herself their enemy. If she succeeded, another wish would be granted. She met his gaze seriously and agreed, though with one condition. She wished to be introduced as his subordinate rather than as a princess. He accepted without objection. Her mood brightened instantly, her earlier hesitation replaced by eager determination. She even playfully wondered if she was meant to charm the heroes, but he flatly instructed her to follow orders precisely. She nodded obediently. Later, seated in silence, the Demon King reviewed the system interface and the strategy unfolding within his mind. The first floor would bombard the invading heroes with overwhelming mana cannon fire. Thinning their numbers, on the fourth floor, Hilderin would serve as bait, drawing survivors deeper into the trap. Even so, with over 200 heroes advancing, the plan alone would not be enough. Only one solution remained, further strengthening himself. His gaze shifted to the radiant treasure resting in his palm. Dense demonic energy spiraled around it. It was an icy water elemental spirit blossom, flawless in its composition. Blossoms corrupted by demonic energy possessed extraordinary potency, effective even against demons themselves. He resolved to secure more elsewhere. He and Hilderin stood in a vast land of endless snow and biting wind. Searching once again, after 3 failed attempts, doubt surfaced that their earlier success might have been mere luck. Then a towering figure appeared before them. The Demon King raised his arm at once, dark energy gathering as irritation flickered across his expression. He demanded to know why this interruption persisted. The massive man bowed deeply, identifying himself as Syodo of the Blue Forest tribe and offering formal greetings. Lowering himself further, he pleaded for protection. The Demon King regarded him coldly and asked whether they sought to become his kin. At once, the gathered tribe dropped to their knees. Their leader explained that their ancestors had once betrayed the demon realm, and because of that original sin, they sought redemption through service. The Demon King dismissed their flattery, seeing through their true motive. They wished to grow stronger by aligning themselves with him. Their affinity for demonic energy made that path more suitable than relying on spirit blossoms. An orc elder acknowledged that their intentions had been exposed. A sealed box was presented. Inside rested a grim lotus encased in icy frost. Recognition flashed in the Demon King's eyes. That explained why it had eluded them. He noted with faint amusement that the tribe had prepared the offering in advance and even understood negotiation, unusual for orcs known primarily for brute force. The elder responded that survival demanded wisdom above all else. The box was handed to Hildurin. Then the Demon King turned back to the tribe. They lacked strength and sought power. He declared he would accept only one among them, Ryodo. A demonic sigil manifested and embedded itself into Syoto's body. Dark power flooded the snowy field as he was ordered to roam the land, expand the tribe under demonic authority, and await further commands. In return, he would receive a reward greater than mere strength, permanence under the Demon King's rule. Demonic energy engulfed Syoto completely, reshaping him as he transcended into a true demon. He knelt and pledged absolute loyalty. The entire tribe followed suit. The scene shifted to Ulgest Mountain Tower. Power surged through its structure. Outside, an organized orc legion assembled in disciplined formation. On the first floor, Lager stood ready beside 60 Mona cannons. The Demon King reviewed the battlefield in his mind. The orcs were positioned precisely as intended. The tower's floors were secured. Princess Hildurin waited on the fourth floor. Despite the meticulous arrangement, tension lingered. He confirmed each stage once more before giving a final nod. Everything was prepared. Lifting his gaze toward the approaching enemy, his dark eyes hardened with resolve. This time, he would repay the humiliation of his previous life. Far below, a hero looked up at the towering mountain and informed Granada of their arrival. Algeist Mountain loomed before them as the heroes advanced with unwavering purpose. Their objective was singular: to slay the Demon King. At the heroes' journey preparation base, a splendid city stood as the birthplace of countless legends. In its vast central hall, an extravagant banquet unfolded to honor the expedition before its departure. Music drifted through the air, goblets clinked in celebration, and laughter echoed beneath towering chandeliers as warriors and nobles alike marked the eve of their march. Among the gathered guests, a young hero in gleaming armor conversed with the elderly Lord Castellan. The Lord praised him for his humility despite his remarkable achievements. The hero offered polite gratitude for the magnificent feast, while the Lord responded that witnessing such a historic campaign was honor enough. After a brief exchange, Lord Castellan suggested that Lord Hillen address the assembly. Though visibly reluctant, Hillen found himself pressed by the Lord's insistence that morale depended on it. With little room to decline, he agreed. The announcement rang across the hall, and every gaze shifted toward him. Hillen stepped forward, his earlier hesitation replaced by composed resolve. He acknowledged the gathered heroes, nobles, knights, mages, mercenaries, and merchants, recognizing each faction with measured respect. Their long campaign, he declared, was nearing its decisive moment. With bold confidence, he claimed that their march for justice had terrified the Demon King so completely that not a single monster had dared to obstruct their path. Laughter rippled through the hall, and pride swelled among the crowd. He cautioned them not to grow careless, assuring them that every preparation had been made. His voice rose with conviction as he proclaimed that the coming day would see the Demon King's head taken. He invoked the outrage of Princess Ern of Hildren's abduction and demanded that the world be reminded who truly ruled it. The hall erupted in thunderous cheers, voices rising in unison as glasses were lifted, and the celebration intensified. From a quiet vantage point, the elf Granada observed the spectacle. Calm and analytical, he noted that just as the Demon King had anticipated, the expedition's size had neither grown nor diminished. Hillen's charisma, Granada admitted to himself, had carried them this far, securing guild funding and steadying wavering mercenaries. Yet unease lingered. The last tower Granada had scouted had been completely empty. The simplicity of their march troubled him. A treacherous thought flickered through his mind, an impulse to betray the heroes before the confrontation began. He recoiled from it instantly, chastising himself. If the Demon King were defeated, his curse would finally be lifted. That future alone justified his loyalty. Seeking clarity, Granada stepped outside. Later that night, beneath a full moon's pale glow, he stood alone on a high balcony, communicating through a faintly glowing device. He reported that the expedition had reached Horton Walk and would begin ascending the mountain at dawn. The voice that answered acknowledged the update and issued a firm directive. once they left Horton Walk. Contact must cease. After a pause, the tone shifted unmistakably. The Demon King himself delivered final warnings. Granada was told to beware the snow during the climb, and to remain vigilant at night. The final instruction was the most cryptic. When the tower door opened, he was never to stand near it. The connection cut abruptly. Granada remained motionless, baffled by the warning's meaning. A voice suddenly sounded behind him, asking what he was doing alone. Startled, Granada turned to find Hillen standing there. He quickly explained that he had only sought fresh air. Hillen studied his tense expression before offering him a drink, an elven fruit wine known for its warmth. Granada accepted, and the heat eased his nerves. Hillen casually asked whether Granada believed they could truly defeat the Demon King. The question carried a teasing edge. As if probing for nervousness, Granada admitted his uncertainty. For a moment, Hillen's cheerful facade faltered as he stared into his wine's reflection. In a quiet confession, he acknowledged that he too did not know the outcome. Assaulting a Demon King's tower had never been easy. Granada attempted reassurance, pointing out that Hillen had once slain the Demon King of Lust. Surely a newly emerged Demon King would be less formidable. Yet even as he spoke, he realized no one truly understood how that previous victory had been achieved. With polite curiosity, he asked Hillen to recount it. Hillen sidestepped the tale. His heroic composure returned as he credited his brave comrades for that triumph. He placed a firm hand on Granada's shoulder and emphasized unity. Together, he declared, victory was inevitable. He announced that he would take the vanguard in battle, and entrusted Granada with guarding his flank. Satisfied, Hillen led him back toward the banquet hall, his expression unreadable. Later, alone, Hillen reflected on their exchange. A cynical smirk crossed his face as his gaze fell upon a ring set with a red gem. The heroic mask slipped, revealing colder intent beneath. He silently acknowledged his reliance on Granada once more. At dawn, the expedition assembled. Citizens lined the streets, shouting blessings and praise. Cries honoring Granada and Lord Wharton echoed through the city as the procession advanced. Granada marched stoically at the front, while Hillen basked in the adoration with a confident smile. Soon the cheers faded as the force left the city behind and entered the harsh Urist mountain range. Snow-covered cliffs stretched endlessly. Bitter wind accompanied them deeper into the canyon. At first, spirits remained high. Some remarked on the mild weather and clear skies, concluding that their ascent would be simple. Others joked that the goddess of victory favored them. A large warrior laughed at the absence of rumored disaster-class monsters, attributing it to Hillen's presence. Then everything changed. A strange purple slime coated one warrior's hand after tapping his companion's shoulder. When he turned, a massive ghoul towered behind him. Panic shattered their confidence. Before chaos fully erupted, Hillen's commanding voice cut through the canyon. Sword drawn, he ordered immediate battle readiness. Ghouls poured in from every direction as steel met. Undead flesh and magic illuminated the snowbound ravine. Then a warning rang out. A frost giant had appeared. From the canyon wall emerged a colossal skeletal monster of ice. Its sheer scale stunned the force. Hillen ordered a retreat and declared he would confront the giant alone while the expedition escaped. Lord Wharton questioned the decision, but Hillen leapt forward without hesitation. A surge of blue energy struck the giant. Though it barely reacted, he pressed the assault, engaging the towering creature directly. The frost giant's crimson eyes burned with power as it swung a massive arm downward. Hillen countered with an upward slash that shattered the icy limb. Shock waves rippling through the canyon. He broke the creature's remaining arm just as effortlessly, and carved into its massive frame with relentless blue energy. As he held the giant's attention, he glimpsed the moment he needed. With a devastating final barrage, he staggered the monster and shouted for the others to flee. The expedition surged past him. Behind them, a violent explosion thundered as Hillen continued to restrain the giant. Wharton urged everyone onward. Denied its prey, the frost giant roared in fury before collapsing inward. Self-destructing in a cataclysmic blast, the survivors staggered into a snowy forest. Collapsing from exhaustion, they spoke in disbelief of the ghouls and the frost giant. Despite the intensity, casualties were low, and credit flowed toward Hillen's overwhelming strength. Rumors spread that he had absorbed the power of the Demon King of Lust. Confidence returned as many concluded he must now rival a Demon King himself. Granada listened, wondering whether Hillen truly could defeat the foe awaiting them. Their path was soon blocked again, this time by towering blue-skinned orcs led by a horned chieftain named Crew. Wharton urged immediate action, but Granada raised a hand, sensing something unnatural. A deep rumble echoed through the mountains. The Demon King's warning about the snow resurfaced in Granada's mind. Horror dawned as cracks split the mountainside. Snow and ice shifted violently. Crew declared that none would reach the tower. The mountain gave way. An avalanche thundered down, engulfing the entire expedition in an instant. Warriors and mages alike were swallowed by the frozen torrent. Granada screamed for everyone to run, but his voice vanished beneath the crushing weight of snow and ice. Far away within his fortress, Demon King Burge observed through holographic screens as the catastrophe unfolded. One by one, the heroes' images flickered out. A cold smile formed on his face. He welcomed them mockingly as their screams faded into silence. Leaning back upon his throne, eyes glinting with satisfaction, he made a quiet vow. This time he would hunt them all down. Far above the battlefield, the Demon King remained seated upon his throne. Posture loose, expression unreadable. A vast screen glowed before him, displaying the frozen mountains in meticulous detail. His eyes did not waver. When he began to explain the strategy he had already set in motion, his tone carried neither excitement nor anger, only inevitability. The first measure had been prepared long in advance. Across the snowbound expanse of the Argus Mountains, the terrain subtly shifted. Mechanisms hidden beneath layers of frost activated with flawless precision, targeting a predetermined sector. Within moments, the white landscape transformed into a maelstrom. Wind howled with unnatural force, snow churned into blinding spirals, and visibility collapsed into near-nothingness. The temperature plunged until the cold itself felt suffocating. Reports from the battlefield became incoherent, then ceased entirely. The blizzard devoured everything caught within its reach. Amid the chaos, Helen Cargill forced his voice above the storm, issuing rapid orders to restore structure. The heroes were commanded to regroup, establish a temporary camp, and search for those scattered by the avalanche that had struck earlier. Progress was slow and exhausting under the relentless gale. From his throne, the Demon King calmly continued outlining the next phase. The second command was uncompromising. Never allow vigilance to falter during the night. What awaited them in darkness was not a simple enemy, and even a flicker of complacency would be fatal. As evening descended, the disorder deepened. Shadows within the forest began to move. Ghoul-type creatures slipped between snow-laden trees, their forms barely distinguishable from the darkness. Massive forest beasts followed, their heavy steps shaking the frozen earth. Recognition dawned too late among the knights. Orc-class monsters had reappeared. Steel was drawn without hesitation. The surviving heroes tightened their ranks, bracing for yet another desperate engagement. Watching from afar, Granada clenched his teeth. Frustration hardened his expression as he silently condemned the Demon King's excessive escalation. The conflict was accelerating beyond the boundaries of calculated warfare. Only then did the Demon King rise from his throne. A faint, grim smile curved his lips as he advanced without hesitation. Avalanche by day, relentless monsters by night. The pattern would continue without pause. Long before the heroes understood the design, exhaustion would corrode both body and mind. Their downfall was not uncertain, it was assured. 3 days blurred into a waking nightmare. Survival and death balanced precariously with every passing hour. When at last the battered remnants of the expedition reached the highest summit of the Argus Mountains, the toll was undeniable. Steps faltered. Breath came ragged. Strength had dwindled to fragments. Confusion spread when the Demon King's tower failed to appear. The absence struck them harder than any monster. Helen Cargill struggled to process it. A Demon King's fortress should have stood upon that peak, an unmistakable monument to their final confrontation. Its disappearance defied reason. Forcing down unease, he ordered the party to split and scour the surrounding terrain. Before the formation could break, a commander intervened. His stance was firm, his voice restrained but resolute. The mission, he declared, had failed. To proceed further would invite pointless casualties. From that moment forward, survival would outweigh victory. Helen Cargill turned slowly, disbelief etched plainly across his face. The decision stood unshaken, though tinged with regret. He clenched his jaw but offered no reply. 6 days after their entry into the mountains, the tower was finally discovered. The moment its silhouette emerged from concealment, fury ignited among the survivors. Accusations rang out over the destruction of Mintania, condemning the madness that could justify such cruelty. When the gates were forced open, confidence resurfaced. The first floor appeared deceptively insignificant, prompting reckless dismissal and an order to advance. That was when the Demon King intervened. His voice resounded from every direction within the tower, cold and omnipresent. The air thickened instantly as his true demonic form manifested. Crimson light flared within his eyes, and suffocating pressure filled the chamber. This was the third command. The instant the doors opened, those who entered would descend into hell. Magical cannon constructs materialized in perfect formation, surrounding the heroes from all sides. Lightning erupted violently, splitting the air with deafening force. Helen Cargill stared forward in disbelief as the scale of annihilation revealed itself. Brilliant blue energy surged outward. The mana cannons had activated. The Demon King did not move. Beams of condensed power tore through the ranks with surgical precision. Knights were erased before screams could form. The assault was not chaotic, it was methodical. Absolute blue lances of energy descended from above, obliterating everything along their trajectory. The front line collapsed in an instant. From within the control chamber, the Demon King observed without emotion. The deployment had been a simple endurance test. Nothing more. When the bombardment ceased, smoke drifted over a devastated battlefield. On the screen, one figure remained standing. Helen Cargill. Below, he struggled to steady himself, sword trembling in his grasp. Confusion and fury warred within him. Nothing he had witnessed aligned with any battlefield logic he understood. Granada emerged from the smoke, shaken but alive, reporting that he had narrowly avoided the cannon strike. Relief flickered across Helen's face. With renewed determination, he proposed advancing to the next floor. Only the two of them remained. The second floor was empty, so was the third. Frustration sharpened Helen's expression. A tower of such magnitude should have teemed with defenders. The absence of resistance felt profoundly unnatural. Granada remained silent, sensing deliberate manipulation behind the emptiness. If entire floors had been cleared, someone powerful was rearranging the battlefield itself. His thoughts drifted inevitably toward Princess Erin. Helen refused to lower his guard. Every step forward was measured, anticipating concealed traps. Upon reaching the fourth floor, both men halted in stunned silence. A lush forest stretched before them, verdant, tranquil, impossibly vibrant within a tower meant for war. Granada exhaled slowly and identified it for what it was. A spatial distortion born of advanced curse magic. Doubts surfaced over whether they were even within the true tower. Then they noticed her. A young woman stood quietly ahead, clad in attire infused with dark mana. Her appearance seemed delicate, yet profoundly unsettling. She introduced herself not as a princess, but as one of the four heavenly kings, the dark spirit master who served and guarded the Demon King. Recognition struck Helen Cargill with brutal clarity. Princess Erin. Despair flickered across Granada's features as the young woman calmly demonstrated spirit arts of the highest tier. Magic only Erin had ever wielded with such flawless mastery. In that instant, the scattered ambushes, the concealed tower, the mana cannons, and the empty floors coalesced into a single, deliberate strategy. This had never been chaos. Bitterness hollowed Helen's laughter. The princess he had believed himself rescuing had stood at the center of the Demon King's defenses from the very beginning. Rage ignited within him, violent and consuming. Before he could act, space itself trembled. Dark purple energy erupted across the garden, fracturing the ground beneath their feet. The Demon King appeared, his presence distorting the air and bending space under the weight of his power. Crimson eyes fixed upon Helen Cargill at last. Resentment flared within the hero. Power alone would no longer suffice. He turned sharply to Granada, demanding his strength. As the ground quaked, the Demon King's gaze shifted as well. Helen stepped closer to Granada, insisting their powers be combined. Confusion flashed across the elf's face. Such fusion defied reason. Before clarity could emerge, his body locked in place. Vitality drained from him, ripped from his blood as though siphoned by an unseen force. Panic surged, strength vanished with terrifying speed. Helen's expression cooled into detachment. He reassured Granada with unsettling calm as the elf collapsed, lifeless strength leaving his body entirely. The Demon King recognized the phenomenon at once. Helen revealed the truth with manic laughter. A forbidden relic, the Elf Eater, converted an elf's boundless vitality directly into mana. Once activated, survival was impossible. He pressed his foot against Granada's face, framing the sacrifice as necessary for the greater good. The Demon King observed silently, then smiled. The act was contemptible and disgraceful, yet unmistakably human. He noted that removal of the ring would strip Helen of all borrowed strength instantly, the fragile foundation of his confidence. Helen laughed wildly, boasting that even the Demon King of Lust had failed to claim it. The Demon King answered with a single name. Gordon Derrick. Shock twisted Helen's face. Pain erupted through him as blood sprayed into the air. He had sensed nothing, no mana fluctuation, no presence, no warning. His arm fell limp. Behind him stood Gordon Derrick, blade already lowered, his expression cool and unimpressed. He criticized the noise and impropriety of humans, as though the strike had been trivial. A second blow sent Helen crashing violently across the ground. Lying there in disbelief, Helen understood immediately. Even empowered by the artifact, he had been overwhelmed by a high-ranking demon. Then a greater pressure descended. The Demon King stood behind him, one hand resting upon his shoulder with effortless dominance. Crimson light burned within his eyes. Movement became impossible. Only then did Helen comprehend that space itself had become a prison. Before him loomed the immense presence of a wolf-shaped sovereign, an ancient ruler whose authority had once commanded the entire continent. There was nowhere left to escape. Dark energy spiraled violently around the Demon King, cracking the ground under its weight. His voice remained chillingly calm, as he declared it time to demonstrate the true meaning of a Demon King. The rumbling intensified. Helen Cargill's eyes widened as the oppressive force expanded outward, filling every corner of the battlefield with the promise of destruction. After Deas delivered a devastating strike, Helen lay on the ground half dead. Even after taking such a tremendous blow, he was still alive. Deas acknowledged Helen's power and strength as impressive, admitting that surviving such a powerful attack was no small feat. Remek was ordered to bind Helen's hands and throw him into prison. Deas also instructed that the other humans who had collapsed outside the door be locked up as well. Remek confirmed that he understood and carried out the command. Granada was in terrible condition, his body pale like a white skeleton. Groaning in pain, he muttered that he could see the afterlife. Deas praised his work and mockingly offered him a carrot. Then Deas gave Granada the Spirit Blossom, and Granada was completely healed. Shock overwhelmed him as his body fully recovered. Deas also gave the Spirit Blossom to the princess. Granada wondered if Deas had healed him using that same Spirit Blossom. A dwarf called out excitedly. Deas acknowledged his hard work and granted him permission to dismantle the tower. The dwarf joyfully thanked the Demon King and cheered in excitement. Deas then instructed everyone to restore and maintain the floors they had been assigned before departing. Granada observed that even after such a fierce battle, Deas looked completely fine, as expected of a Demon King. However, the princess appeared lost in thought. When Granada asked what was wrong, she claimed it was nothing, but expressed her belief that the Demon King was tired. The scene shifted to Deas alone. Despite appearing composed earlier, he was now lying on the floor in exhaustion. Gritting his teeth, he reflected that the battle had been extremely close. A Demon King could not afford to show weakness. He cursed Helen Cargill and recognized that this was the strength of one of the 10 stars, the 10 strongest heroes on the continent, although Helen Cargill was considered one of the weaker members among them. Deas admitted that he had barely used any demonic energy points to strengthen himself in this life, because he did not have many to begin with. He acknowledged that if Helen Cargill had been in perfect condition, victory would have been impossible. His plan had exhausted Helen, triggered him and thrown him into panic. The chaos had narrowed Helen's field of view and created an opening. As a result, Deas' all-out strike landed successfully. For now, he had achieved a perfect victory, without relying on the traditional standards of a Demon King. This was something that had never happened in the past. He realized he had successfully altered fate. He believed he could change the future and take revenge on those damned heroes. The scene then transitioned to Holton Walk Press Conference Hall, where chaos reigned. Reporters argued angrily, accusing the heroes of giving up because they could not find the tower. Investors demanded accountability and questioned who was responsible for the failure. A representative insisted that they had not failed yet and claimed there was still hope. He stated that Sir Helen Cargill and the great heroes had not given up and were still searching for the Demon King's tower. Requesting more time, the king erupted in anger, cursing Helen Cargill for boasting and failing. He declared that if the princess was not rescued, Helen would be executed. The princess attempted to speak about the hero's journey, but the king dismissed her concerns and ordered them to find Lodger immediately. Rumors began circulating that Helen Cargill had never returned and that he might already be dead. News of the new Demon King spread rapidly across the entire continent. The story became distorted and exaggerated. The world fell into deep sorrow. As a result, Burge's demonic energy points piled up quickly. At the Heroes Guild headquarters, A tense conference meeting took place. The heroes questioned Hero Wharton about the truth of his claims. Wharton swore on his name that he had spoken only the truth. An elder hero acknowledged the seriousness of the matter and urged caution, since the identity of the new Demon King was unknown. They agreed to wait 10 more days for news of Hillen Kargil. If there was still no information after 10 days, all 4,728 heroes on the continent would launch a full-scale assault to eliminate the new Demon King. The scene then moved to Burge's Tower underground prison, where Hillen was bound. Deas approached him and noted his exceptional recovery speed. Hillen understood that being kept alive meant Deas wanted something, and demanded that he get to the point. Deas calmly asked Hillen to become his vassal. Hillen was shocked and struggled to process what he had heard. Deas placed a bag filled with gold coins before him, and explained the financial burden of a hero's journey. The cost of food, security, lodging, membership dues, armor, weapons, and top-grade consumables were immense. These expenses were typically covered by investments from merchant groups and nobles. If the Demon King was defeated, the heroes' lives changed for the better. If they failed, they were buried in debt. This time, all investments had been focused on Hillen Kargil. The captain of the hero party, Hillen realized that even if he escaped, he would be branded a failed hero and forced to live in hiding while being chased by debt. He questioned how Deas knew this. Granada revealed that he had told him. Hillen accused Granada of betrayal, but Granada angrily reminded him of being scammed and declared that he had been on this side from the beginning. Deas declared that Hillen's failure was due to the existence of a Demon King like him, one unlike any before. He acknowledged that heroes would eventually adapt and find ways to clear towers. However, if one of the strongest heroes secretly interfered with those plans, humanity's success would become uncertain. Deas revealed Armani's orb, a magical tool used to monitor his subordinates. Once inside the body, it would instantly cling to the brain. He would immediately know if Hillen harbored hostility and could destroy his brain with a single gesture. If the orb failed to adapt, it would mean rejection, and Hillen would be killed. There were plenty of usable heroes available. Hillen's injured companions lay nearby, half dead and groaning in pain. Hillen protested that a hero as strong as him was immune to mind control magic, and that the orb would disappear upon entering his body. Granada countered that a hero could willingly dispel their mental defense. Deas reinforced that Hillen had heard him. Hillen angrily insulted Granada and declared he would never submit to a Demon King. Deas silenced him and forced the orb into his mouth. Hillen endured intense pain. Granada commented on his tenacity and questioned what would happen if he chose death instead. Deas confidently stated that a greedy human who treated comrades as disposable for money would never sacrifice himself. A status window appeared, showing Hillen Kargil equipped with Armani's orb and listed as the Demon King's vassal. Hillen cursed in frustration. Later, back at the castle, Remek acknowledged that although Hillen Kargil had become a vassal, his massive debt of 100,000 gold would heavily restrict his activities. The gold coins previously exchanged for demonic energy points amounted to nearly 2,000 gold, a sum comparable to a small nation's annual budget. Remek questioned how more would be gathered. Deas stated that it was time to receive a message, referring to the annual gathering of Demon Kings, known as the Unison of Towers. In his previous life, he had never attended because he found Demon Kings banding together disgusting. Now, however, he recognized that the other Demon Kings who had survived in Erin for a long time must have accumulated vast amounts of gold and treasure. Remek was initially shocked at the thought of exchanging demonic energy points for money again. However, after witnessing the direct confrontation with the heroes, he admitted that following traditional Demon King standards would not have stopped them. He accepted that he could now believe in Deas. An invitation to the Unison of Towers arrived. Remek informed Deas, with a confident smirk. Deas declared that they would go and swindle his senior Demon Kings. Remek affirmed his loyalty as they prepared to depart. The scene shifted to the Tower of Lies, specifically the 13th floor, the Demon King's room. Deas entered with a grin, hoping he would not be late for the appointment. Everyone had gathered early, and he wondered whether there was much to discuss without him. Draxon Doldoff of the Beast King race, a wolf beastman, welcomed him. Riene Sordine, the demon lord of the cold race and a frost demon, remarked that he was the rumored Deas. Ugur Belbeck, the demon king of the Diamond River and a titan, declared that the fool who had insulted Jiangxiok had been taken away. Jason Corkmundo, the devil of lies from an unknown tribe, cheerfully welcomed Deas as well. Deas smiled and mockingly called them pathetic, questioning their talk of harmony and whether they felt ashamed as demon kings. Inwardly, he admitted that he knew this was the right direction for Erin, yet he still held reservations. Velbeck suddenly exploded in anger. calling Deas a stupid piece of trash, and questioning what a newcomer like him knew about airing. Deas calmly observed that by lightly provoking someone, it became easy to read their thoughts. He sensed that Belbeck was openly radiating murderous intent. With a smirk, Deas sarcastically wondered whether he was not the one in charge. Belbeck responded furiously that if Deas wished to die, he would gladly grant it. Deas challenged him to try. As the two glared at each other, tension thickened. Jason intervened, reminding Uger Belbeck that this was a place for harmony, and asking him not to ruin it. In an instant, the killing intent between the two demon kings vanished. Deas noticed that it was not magic and questioned whether it was Jason's power or the power of the tower itself. He speculated whether it was similar to Mana's ghost, but dismissed unfounded assumptions and resolved not to lower his guard. Jason thanked them for their cooperation and announced the beginning of the harmony of the top, allowing free discussion among them. Deas commented that it was nothing special. Draxon angrily asked Deas where Hillen Cargill was. Deas remained silent for a moment and began to answer that Hillen Cargill was elsewhere. At that moment, the scene shifted to the Tower of Lies adjutant's reception room. The aides of the Demon King of Beasts and the Devil of Lies stared intensely at Ramek. One asked whether Hillen Cargill was dead. Ramek nervously replied that he did not know and had not even reached the top, guessing that Hillen might be wandering around Mount Urgist. He asked them not to press him further. Another beast questioned whether that made sense, insisting the tower should be visible. Ramek clarified that it was not their tower. Another beast suggested that perhaps the rumors were true about their demon king. Ramek recalled Dea's earlier instructions to claim ignorance if asked about Hillen Cargill, and to maintain strict confidentiality while turning him into a spy. Ramek reflected that although it felt strange, he now knew the Demon King had not been wrong. He began to affirm that the Demon King he served was something else entirely, even though he clearly understood the truth. Ramek suddenly shouted that the devil he served was a rebel and a fool who never listened to anything. He complained that if left alone for even a moment, that Demon King would begin doing strange things, and that if it was going to be like this, he should just handle everything himself. Strangely, Ramek felt refreshed after venting. The other beasts responded with understanding, saying all demon lords were like that, and lamenting about their own demon kings. Hearing this sympathy, tears poured from Ramek's eyes as he realized he had needed comfort. The scene returned to the meeting. Belbeck angrily demanded that Deas explain himself. Deas calmly affirmed his earlier claim. Belbeck shouted that Hillen Cargill had not even arrived, and that Deas had not built a tower atop the mountain, accusing him of deception. Deas replied that wherever he built his tower was entirely his own choice. Jason observed that while warriors still aimed for the tower, Deas had left it and come here, mockingly referring to him as the Demon King who lost his tower, and sarcastically calling him the best leader ever. Deas insisted there was nothing to worry about, and that he would guard his own tower. Deas admitted internally that the Devil of Lies had been bothering him for some time. Jason then suggested ending the matter without further argument. Draxon angrily asked whether Deas believed Grand Duke Alkane would ignore this situation. Deas dismissed the old lady's opinion as irrelevant. Draxon thought that Deas was incredibly stubborn, but chose to move on. Deas realized that even if he tried to catch them, there was no way to confirm their doubts. It was better not to get caught. He reminded himself that the top priority was to collect 100,000 gold. As the conversation among demon lords continued, Deas noticed Berger was more active in discussion than before. He observed that even among demon kings, there was a clear hierarchy, with the Demon King of Lies standing at the top tier. He searched for any demon king who seemed desperate for magic points, and gathered information carefully. During this time, Renee cast a cold gaze toward him, leaving him confused. The scene shifted to the 13th floor balcony of the Tower of Lies. Renee stood there alone. Deas approached and asked what was going on. She explained that it was not a secret matter, and that after hearing rumors about him, she had wanted to speak privately. Deas asked whether she met with him, and she agreed. She admitted that she agreed with some of his opinions. Deas was shocked and wondered whether she had ever spoken like this in his previous life. Renee clarified that she did not hate orthodoxy like he did, and in fact believed in the classics. However, she acknowledged that flexibility was sometimes necessary, especially in airing. She had wanted to see him personally, believing she could communicate with him better than with the others. Though it was essentially the same, she assessed him and said he was not bad and better than she had expected. Deas thanked her for the compliment. Riene then handed him a personal communication port, named Cyril, telling him to contact her anytime for advice. She added that as long as he did not insult Jeongseok in front of his wife, she would accept it. She expressed hope that someone capable of communication like him would not disappear soon. Deas asked why she did not simply speak with the devil of lies. Riene replied that his mind could not be read, and that although he was better than the other two, he was still difficult. She then left. Deas reflected that he still could not completely believe it, but meeting Riene Sordine felt like an unexpected gain. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Berger's tower. First floor, the princess had baked cookies for Loger. She proudly offered them, explaining that the ingredients had been purchased by the Demon King, and that she had baked them with the help of spirits. Loger was surprised to see snacks in the Demon King's tower. He acknowledged her as a genius spiritist and felt at ease. The princess encouraged him to try them. Loger laughed and agreed to eat with gratitude. He thought that even if the homemade cookies were not delicious, he would still praise them, considering the princess had grown up without ever doing such work. Upon taking a bite, he was stunned. The taste was fantastic, so powerful that it made his mana sway. He had never tasted anything like it. It felt like heaven. The princess asked how it tasted. Loger struggled to comprehend what she had created. She explained that she had mixed a little sesame oil into the dough, and felt relieved that he liked it. Loger questioned why it felt so precious to him, and realized that his mana was surging. The princess smiled, and said it was a gift to build friendship in the future. She teased that he would keep buying them if he kept looking at her like that. Loger admitted that was true, but wondered how Granada would react. The princess laughed and predicted Granada would be even more shocked. She also wondered whether the Demon King would like them. The scene then shifted back to Deas returning from his conversation with Riene to rejoin the meeting. However, everyone had already left. He realized the harmony of the tower was over. Jason confirmed that it had ended. Deas remarked that it felt short. Jason offered him tea, and subtly remarked that he seemed to need something greatly, namely human money. Deas was shocked by the implication and wondered where the information had leaked from. Jason declared that pretending was useless because Draxon had already informed him. He insisted there was no need for unnecessary psychological warfare and proposed making a deal involving demonic energy points and human money. Deas demanded to know Jason's real plan. Jason chuckled and revealed that his plan was to stand on Deas' side. He expressed hope that they would get along well in the future. Soon after, the scene shifted to the first floor of Burge Tower. Numerous bags of gold, sent by Jason, were stacked there. Deas instructed that 100,000 gold be taken and used. Hillen stood shocked, realizing that Deas had truly obtained the money. Deas warned them to ensure that the source of the funds could not be traced. Internally, Deas remained cautious. He knew Jason could trace the flow of money. If Jason followed his movements perfectly, the worst-case scenario would leave him as Jason's puppet. Since he did not know Jason's true intentions, he resolved to remain extremely careful. Addressing the others, Deas explained that those who remained had been turned into dark knights and dark magicians. The one in the center was Ammon of the Golden Moon Mercantile Group, something Deas had known when he made the contract. Hillen remained silent. Deas instructed that the dark knights and dark magicians of the Tower of Burge handle the funds, assuring that they would follow Hillen's orders faithfully. The dark knights and dark magicians, who had been forced into contracts by Deas, burned with humiliation. They lamented becoming subordinates of the Demon King and silently begged Hillen to save them. Deas remarked that it was not a total failure since they were all alive, and the debt could now be repaid. Hillen realized that this meant he could soon return to his activities as a hero. With a smirk, he commented that the situation did not seem so bad, and suggested they make it work as partners. The Dark Knights and Dark Magicians were shocked by his boldness. Dea's expression darkened. He pressed the orb in his hand, triggering the Armani orb embedded in Hillen's brain. Intense pain struck Hillen, causing him to collapse to the ground. Deas coldly corrected him, declaring that they were not partners but slave and master. The Dark Knights and Dark Magicians felt that Hillen deserved it. Hillen, still in pain, awkwardly joked about slave and master games. Deas replied that he did not expect sincere loyalty and ordered them to move out. Hillen continued groaning. At that moment, the princess approached and handed Hillen a letter, asking him to deliver it to her sister Alina, the 13th princess of Hildurin. Hillen acknowledged that delivering it was not impossible and questioned why she had sided with the Demon King, noting that he was now in this state because of it. The princess apologized, but stated that she had no intention of immediately returning to the kingdom. She trusted that a hero like Hillen would understand, especially regarding the secrets of the royal family. Hillen reflected on the secrets of Hildurin's royal family and admitted that if the rumors were true, her choice was understandable. In the end, he agreed to deliver the letter to Alina. Later, Pixel voiced concern, saying it was not that he distrusted the Demon King, but he questioned whether Hillen would truly follow orders properly. Deas explained that Hillen Kargil was not merely a materialist chasing money. Although he did not appear noble, he lacked the vulgar greed typical of humans obsessed with wealth. However, he was not particularly honorable either. Deas concluded that Hillen sought popularity rather than honor. His aggressive behavior stemmed from his desire to stand out. With proper control through the Armani orb, there would be no better spy than him. Pixel realized that Deas had studied humans deeply and felt he could not remain idle. Deas smirked and suggested that if a hero, now a subordinate of the Demon King, destroyed human society from within, it would be a spectacle worth witnessing. Pixel affirmed his loyalty. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Both were confused. The princess entered carrying cookies and offered them. Deas accepted the plate and remarked that she seemed to enter and leave the room freely lately. He warned that if he disliked them, he would send her to the underground prison for a month. Confidently, the princess urged him to try them first. Deas dismissed it as a simple human dessert. However, upon taking a bite, he was visibly shocked by the flavor. The princess noticed his reaction and wondered if he liked it as much as Loger had. Sweat formed on Deas' forehead, but he smirked and commented that for a human, it was decent. The princess was stunned that he withstood it. Deas identified medicinal herbs mixed into the cookie and described the flavor as dangerous. She happily confirmed it and praised his immediate recognition. Deas implied that she sought something specific in return for the reward he had given her. She admitted that was true. Deas remained silent in confusion. Soon afterward, it was revealed that upon arriving at Molten Walk, they immediately departed for Hildurin through a teleport circle, and Granada restored discipline. At the Scarlet Hawk mercenaries' headquarters, Granada's subordinates returned battered. Furious, Granada accused them of fleeing during the first avalanche and abandoning their captain. One swollen-faced subordinate tearfully argued that even heroes had fallen in Era Ergist, and that mid-rank mercenaries like them had no chance of holding out. They insisted they had no other choice if they wanted to survive. Granada angrily beat him, demanding whether that justified abandoning their captain. At that moment, someone called out to Granada. He turned and saw a blonde female knight. She introduced herself as Hero Keed. She explained that due to certain circumstances, she could not join the hero's expedition from the beginning, but had come late to seize the opportunity and requested to join. Granada questioned why a hero was there. His drunken subordinates revealed that she had paid for their drinks while he was away, and suggested he join them for a drink as well. Granada silenced them with another beating and thanked Keed for the drinks, but informed her that the hero's expedition was already over. Keed was shocked. Granada explained that Hillen Kargil and the others had already left Holton Walk. Stunned, Keed begged him to share the story of their failure. Granada resolved to speak only what the Demon King had permitted. They moved to a restaurant where he recounted the events. Keed offered him gold coins and expressed disbelief that the Demon King's tower had not been at the top. She concluded that there was no reason for her to remain and thanked him for his time, calling the money a gift before departing. Granada's subordinates commented that she seemed like a naive novice hero who understood nothing about the world and hoped she would not be betrayed someday. Granada angrily threatened them to watch their words. He then quietly observed Keed and her knights as they left. The scene shifted to a lonely alley in Holton Walk. Keed approached someone she addressed as Princess, stating that it was time to return since her fiancé was waiting. The princess refused, declaring she would live as a hero. Granada secretly observed out of curiosity. He noticed the knights moved silently and wore masks that concealed their expressions. He realized that the hero was actually a princess, and that the kingdom's affairs were meant to be handled internally. Suddenly, a knight pressed a sword against Granada's throat. Stopping him, sweat dripped down his face as fear gripped him. The knight demanded his identity and accused him of spying. The knight also noted that Granada was using suspicious magic. Internally panicking, Granada realized the object he carried was a magical artifact given by the Demon King. If captured, they would discover his connection as a subordinate. The knight's expression darkened as he concluded that Granada was a spy from another realm. Deciding that Granada could not be allowed to live, the knight prepared to act, overwhelmed with fear. Granada thought of the Demon King. He realized he had chosen the wrong place to spy, and desperately searched for a way out as his mind raced. The instant their eyes met, alarm spread through the courtyard. Shouts rang out branding him an assassin, and armed soldiers rushed to intercept him as he sprinted toward the palace interior. Chaos erupted, orders overlapped. The princess was urged to step back, while knights formed a protective wall around her. Even a seasoned female knight faltered in shock at the sudden intrusion. Granada's jaw tightened. At that moment, he was the only elf in Horton Walk. If he revealed his elven abilities, his identity would be exposed beyond concealment. Yet holding back his strength might cost him his life. Escape no longer seemed certain. Arrows were drawn and aimed. The princess refused to retreat behind her guards, insisting on standing as a warrior rather than a sheltered royal. Granada's thoughts raced. Exposure no longer mattered if survival was at stake. Just as arrows were released toward him, a new presence descended upon the battlefield. Deas arrived. The arrows disintegrated midair, shattered by an unseen force. Granada stared in disbelief as dark wings unfurled and lifted Deas into the sky. A blazing flame gathered in his hand, radiating immense mana. His tone carried casual reproach, as though scolding someone for idling in the wrong place. Granada recognized him instantly, the Demon King. The surrounding knights recoiled in horror. Panic surged through their ranks as they realized the true adversary before them. Some cried that the Demon King had come for the princess. Others urged sacrifice and defense. Yet the princess herself ordered them to attack, declaring that her safety was secondary. If this was an opportunity to defeat the Demon King, it must not be wasted. Deas regarded her with mild curiosity, almost as if reassessing a misconception. The knights accused him of deceit, demanding to know his purpose there. Granada, equally irritated, pressed him for an explanation. Deas claimed it was mere coincidence while running an errand. The claim enraged them further. Moments earlier in the tower, the princess had requested something from him, Signal powder. She had explained its origins. Centuries ago, an elf named Signal had returned to the human kingdom under royal command, and developed a supplement to aid humans in forming spirit contracts. That creation became known as Signal powder. Deas had questioned why she needed it, suggesting her talent alone should suffice. She had feigned modest doubt, citing the tower's thin mana, and hinting at a potential contract with a higher-level spirit. Her spirits mimicked her subtle anxiety. Deas quickly deduced her ambition. In her previous life, Ernan had formed a high-level spirit contract at 27, shaking the continent. Such contracts were exceedingly rare, yet now she sought to accomplish it 7 years earlier. She wondered how he had discovered her intention when she had secluded herself in the tower for months. Deas dismissed the tension, casually finishing a cookie and departing, promising to retrieve the powder. Back in the present confrontation, he raised a concentrated flame of mana, explaining he would conclude matters swiftly. The knights and princess stared at the overwhelming energy. A massive explosion followed, engulfing the area. When the smoke cleared, destruction spread in all directions. Yet the princess remained standing, bathed in a vivid green aura. Her warrior's energy had shielded her. Even Deas appeared momentarily surprised. The knights begged her to withdraw, but anger fueled her power further. She declared that a warrior's aura was the demon race's bane. Her place was not within palace walls, but on the battlefield. With fierce resolve, she executed Jespine's highest sword technique, the crescent slash. The swing unleashed another explosive shockwave. This technique, inherited only by the imperial family's most exceptional heirs, released aura in a single devastating instant. Though of lower succession rank, she had endured relentless training to be acknowledged as a warrior, rather than a political pawn destined for marriage. Capturing the Demon King would prove her worth and grant her freedom from imperial constraints. Her blade cut forward with conviction. Deas responded by generating a superior aura that shattered her sword mid-strike. Fragments scattered across the ruined ground. He regarded the broken weapon with detached amusement and unleashed his ultimate technique. Dark red energy enveloped him, pressing down upon her like a crushing weight. For the first time, terror overtook the warrior princess. Sweat traced her face as she realized the overwhelming disparity. The Demon King loomed above, remarking that someone both princess and warrior could prove useful in many ways. The implication sent dread coursing through her. Knights attempted to intervene, but another cataclysmic burst of power erupted from Dea's. When the thick fog finally dissipated minutes later, many knights lay fallen. Two healers rushed onto the devastated grounds. Horrified by the scale of destruction, they sensed demonic magic lingering in the air. Survivors were scarce. One gravely wounded knight managed to gasp that the princess had been taken by the Demon King, mentioning black flames before losing consciousness. The healers trembled at the realization. It was the Demon King of Urgest. The scene shifted to the dungeon of the Tower of Burgay. The warrior princess lay unconscious, bruised and bloodied. Another captive princess examined her and mistakenly wondered if this newcomer was Senial. Deas clarified that she was Kid Jespine, the ninth princess of the Jespine Empire. From now on, she would reside on the fourth floor. Though injured, she was to be treated and raised carefully, as she would prove useful. The captive princess questioned why yet another royal had been brought in so suddenly. Deas claimed he had simply picked her up along the way to earn Magi points. Periodic kidnappings of moderately ranked royals generated such points. When she asked what Magi points were, Deas immediately realized he had revealed too much. Flustered, he brushed it off and redirected the conversation, promising to bring her the Senial powder she desired. As he departed, he scolded himself internally for growing too comfortable around a prisoner. News soon spread across the continent. The ninth princess of Jespine had been abducted at Horton Walk. At the Hero Guild headquarters, Hillen Cargill stood at the center of questioning. The gathered heroes confirmed that his testimony held no deception. Embarrassed, he admitted he had failed to locate the Demon King's tower and accepted responsibility. The others refused to blame him, arguing that punishing a warrior for retreat would discourage future leaders. They then discussed the kidnapping. Jespine had requested the raising of the warrior banner for war against Urgest. Having faced Urgest before, they sought Hillen's opinion. He advised caution. Rather than rushing into war, they should prioritize locating the tower through reconnaissance. A Demon King confident in his power would not hide carelessly. If this one concealed himself, he might be weaker than presumed. Most agreed. A powerful Demon King would not need secrecy. An all-out campaign was temporarily suspended until the tower's location was confirmed. Hillen bowed respectfully. Inwardly, he wondered if this was what the Demon King desired. Time bought through his influence. Elsewhere, Deas received Hillen's report. Relief crossed his mind. The guild had been preparing a full assault. Without Hillen's intervention, disaster might have struck. Accepting Hillen and Granada into his circle had proven wise. Their activities outside the tower delayed the warriors' advance, while Magi points steadily accumulated. The dwarves continued reinforcing the first floor of the tower. Crudo expanded its influence. Once Princess Ernian completed her high-level spirit contract, even brave warriors would stand no chance. When the tower reached its peak strength, Deas intended to turn his attention outward. His true revenge would begin, against the warriors who had once killed him. His gaze fixed upon a distant objective, the land of powerful mages and advanced magic engineering, the city of Amur. Acquiring it unnoticed would be extraordinarily difficult. The challenge ahead was immense. The scene then shifts to the kingdom of Akan, specifically the city of magic engineering, known as Amur. On the outskirts of the world's largest magic market stands a humble little shop. This place is called Jetson's Paradise. Inside the shop, the seller spends his time lazily flipping through a newspaper. As he continues reading, boredom settles in. His expression turns disappointed, and he lets out a tired sigh. While absorbed in the news, he reflects on the latest rumors spreading across the land. He notes that the ninth princess of Jespine was kidnapped immediately after the hero expedition came to an end. He also dwells on the growing frustration surrounding the Hero Guild and their apparent inaction. The article further mentions that a hero named Roger is now being hunted. Taking all of this in, the shopkeeper quietly concludes that these truly are the end times. Just then, the shop's doorbell rings, signaling the arrival of a customer. Deas steps inside, seeing him enter. The seller quickly puts the newspaper aside and greets Deas warmly with a bright smile, welcoming him and politely asking if he is looking for something specific. Deas shows little interest in the seller's enthusiasm. He scans the shop with clear disinterest and states that he wants Senial powder, asking whether it is available. At the same time, he thinks to himself that the Senial powder is meant for the princess, as she personally asked him to bring it. The seller reacts with sudden excitement and confidently responds that they do have it. He continues greeting Diaz with overwhelming enthusiasm, almost as if Diaz is his very first customer, and no one else has visited the shop before. Watching all this, Diaz grows irritated and internally remarks on how rundown the shop looks. At this point, the narration expands to explain the setting. The Kingdom of Akan is known as the Holy Land of Magic Engineering. It is a place where heroes, mages, and alchemists from all across the continent gather. Because of this, famous shops are always crowded with heroes or powerful mages. As a result, even if demonic energy is carefully hidden, the risk of being discovered remains high. This is precisely why Burrs deliberately chose an isolated shop with very few customers. The seller then excitedly holds up 2 glass vials of senile powder in front of Diaz. Laughing cheerfully, he becomes overly enthusiastic and presents a discounted offer. Claiming that Diaz is extremely lucky, he praises Diaz's fortune, insisting that there is no need to visit any other shops after coming here. He calls the deal amazing and offers a special price of just 1 gold coin per vial, emphasizing how cheap it is. The seller behaves as if a grand festival like New Year's Eve is underway. Handing out discounts with excessive excitement, Diaz, clearly irritated, tells the seller to stop yelling and points out that the price is still expensive. He then picks up one of the senile powder vials and observes it closely. He notes that the senile powder he knows is green, and expresses confusion over why this one is purple. The seller laughs and explains that this is a newly developed version of senile powder. Lowering his voice, he adds that it was made in absolute secrecy at the Mage Tower and has not yet been released to the market. He emphasizes that it is a super rare item, repeating how rare it is, and insists that it is a great deal that should not be missed. With a confident grin, the seller warns that if Diaz does not buy it now, this opportunity will never come again. He adds that many people are searching for this particular kind of senile powder. While smirking to himself, the seller secretly assumes that Diaz looks like a noble and must have a strong reason for traveling all the way to such a remote place. In his mind, he decides to fleece Diaz completely. Understanding the seller's intentions, Diaz stares at him with anger. He realizes that the seller knows he cannot afford to go anywhere else and is deliberately trying to extort him. The thought of killing the seller crosses his mind as his frustration peaks. Moments later, the shop's doorbell rings again. The seller immediately turns his attention away and cheerfully welcomes the new customers. Among them, one customer quietly whispers to another, expressing disbelief at having to start in a rundown place like this. As Diaz looks toward the entrance, he freezes in shock. He instantly recognizes the newcomers as Princess Louise and her knights. One of the knights speaks to Louise, stating that if the man named Roger has any sense at all, he would avoid appearing in places that draw attention. Louise responds with visible irritation, openly venting her anger. She complains that the situation infuriates her and that she cannot believe she has to come to such a dump because of him. Hearing their conversation, Diaz begins to feel uneasy. His tension rises because he is the one who kidnapped Roger. The knight then approaches the seller and asks him a question, explaining that they are searching for someone. Diaz nervously watches her and studies her appearance. He takes note of her fierce temper, her rough voice, and above all, her distinct twin tails. He becomes certain that she is Louise Verft. At the same time, he reassures himself that she might not recognize him, since he had used a magic item during their previous encounter. The seller laughs and responds to the knight, explaining that he understands they are looking for someone. He then adds that he suffers from a strange condition, where his memory fails if he does not sell anything. The knight reacts in shock at his words. Louise immediately snaps in anger, openly insulting the seller. In the next moment, Louise steps forward and presses her sword close to the seller's neck. Fueled by rage, she shouts that he clearly does not understand the situation and accuses him of daring to try to extort her. The seller's face turns pale blue with fear, and he screams in terror. He desperately reminds them that murder is forbidden in the royal capital and insists that they cannot do this. Trembling, he stutters that if they are going to threaten him, they should at least buy something. In panic, he hurriedly suggests an item. Louise explodes again in anger, reacting with disbelief at his suggestion and calling him insane. Although the seller is clearly terrified, he forces a slight smile and makes a reckless offer. He states that if they buy an item, he will gladly accept whatever punishment follows. Hearing this, Diaz is left stunned. Louise is also taken aback, reacting in shock at what the seller has just said. Louise suddenly bursts into laughter at the seller's words. She remarks that he is quite interesting and agrees to see what he has to offer. Seizing the moment, the seller renames the senil powder and presents it as an item called arche powder. He lies confidently, claiming that it is incredibly useful for dwarven masters, and casually states that it costs 3 gold. Watching this, Deas grows furious. He clenches his teeth and curses the seller in his mind, realizing that the man first tried to scam him and is now attempting to deceive them as well. Louise, however, seems pleased. She happily accepts the arche powder, expresses her gratitude, and offers blessings to the seller. She then proceeds to ask whether a dwarf named Roger has passed through the shop recently. The seller responds that this is the first time he has heard of Roger. He then adds that there is a well-known place where blacksmiths usually gather whenever they come to the kingdom of Akan, suggesting that someone there likely knows something. Louise considers the answer acceptable and tells her knight that it is not bad. She decides that they should leave. The knight agrees without hesitation. As she turns to go, Louise mutters that the seller's behavior was shameful. Once Louise and her knight leave the shop, Deas finally lets out a quiet sigh of relief as calm returns. After they leave, Deas raises his eyebrows and comments to the seller that it was not bad at all, selling trash for 3 gold, and notes that the seller has real guts. The seller happily pockets the 3 gold and smiles with satisfaction. He remarks that he is glad Deas stayed quiet. He explains that she looked like a young lady from a noble family, so he assumed she would easily pay 3 gold. He also reasons that she would not kill him for free. The seller then smirks and observes that Deas seems to have an interest in business. He adds that for about 10 gold, he could even share a secret. Deas reacts internally, thinking that the man is a massive scammer. He admits to himself that the seller's skill at ripping off humans is quite impressive, and he even finds himself liking it a little. Deas leans closer to the seller with a smirk and tells him to go to the Golden Moon Merchant Guild. The seller is left confused. Deas continues, explaining that if the seller says he was sent by the mountain, they will accept him. While rearranging the powders neatly on the shelf, the seller responds that he wonders if Deas is connected to the Golden Moon Guild. He remarks that the guild is practically bankrupt and questions why someone with such a bright future like himself would ever go there. Deas smirks again and explains the reason clearly. He reveals that the customer the seller just scammed was Louise Verft, making sure the weight of that name fully sinks in. Hearing this revelation, the seller's hands go limp. All the glass vials of powder slip from his grasp and shatter on the floor. He stands frozen in shock, utterly terrified. With a trembling and shaken voice, he realizes who she truly was. He mutters in horror that she was the villainous princess, the mad dog of Verft, Louise Verft. Overwhelmed by fear, he demands to know what Deas wants. Deas calmly tosses a single gold coin onto the table. He reminds the seller that he already gave his answer, and repeats his demand to join the Golden Moon Guild. He explains that the monthly salary there is 1 gold, and warns that if the offer is refused, he will bring Louise back to the shop. The seller panics completely. He clasps his hands together and begs for his life, pleading desperately for anything but that outcome. Then, in a sudden shift, his expression changes. He grins sharply and mocks the situation, claiming that Deas should not think he would actually beg. He dismisses the idea outright, raising his hand aggressively. The seller shouts in anger, questioning who Deas thinks he is trying to scam. He orders Deas to beat it and get out. He even dares him to bring her back, scoffing at the idea that even the mad dog would personally return to a filthy place like this. Without saying another word, Deas turns to leave. As he goes, he quietly responds that it will be as he wishes. After leaving the shop, Deas goes straight to Louise and tells her everything. Fueled by anger, Louise immediately returns to the shop. The moment she remembers how she was scammed, her fury reignites, burning like fire as she storms back toward the seller. Watching this unfold, Deas smirks quietly. The seller is struck with overwhelming fear and begins screaming in panic. In the end, completely broken, the seller finally hands over real senil powder in exchange for just 1 gold coin. Once outside, Deas examines the senil powder and thinks to himself that even shops in the slums sell normal senil powder. He internally curses the seller, realizing once again what a scammer he truly was. At that moment, Louise notices Deas and speaks to him, pointing out that he is still there. She thanks him sincerely, explaining that she managed to get her money back because of him. Deas responds politely, and then asks what she did to that miserable shopkeeper. Louise clenches her teeth in frustration and admits that, Unfortunately, since this is a foreign country, she could not do more than teach the man a small lesson. She vents her anger further, saying she should have ripped his heart out. Seeing her rage, one of the knights tries to calm her down and remarks that no one would have expected the little princess to become this angry. Deas grows uneasy and thinks to himself that she is still eccentric. He suddenly fixates on her words, especially the mention of a heart, and reflects on it briefly. Trying to change the subject, Deas asks her about the person she was searching for, confirming whether the man named Roger is a blacksmith. Louise immediately brightens with excitement. She eagerly confirms that he is, and urgently asks if Deas knows him and where he is. Deas then takes out a necklace and shows it to them, asking whether the object might be connected to Roger in any way. The knight reacts instantly, shocked by the sight of it. He recognizes the necklace and reveals that it is one of Roger's early works. Deas then calmly tells them a fabricated story. He explains that 2 months ago, he happened to come across Roger in a tropical forest in Ormus. At the time, Roger was starving, so Deas shared some supplies with him. As a token of gratitude, Roger gave him this necklace. Deas adds that it looked like the work of a master, which is why he kept it. Louise takes the necklace into her hand. She clenches her fist tightly, her body trembling with anger. She admits that she now owes Deas yet again. She adds that she would have loved to welcome him to the palace with drinks for 5 whole days, but circumstances do not allow it. Hearing this, Deas grows uneasy and silently hopes she restrains herself. Louise then hands Deas an emblem. She explains that they need to catch Roger before he leaves, so Deas should keep it for now. She tells him that the emblem can be exchanged for the best equipment in the Dwarven Kingdom. Deas thanks her and remarks that it seems useful. He accepts the emblem and takes it. Soon after, Louise and her knights begin to leave. Deas watches them as they walk away. One of the knights asks Louise what she plans to do next. Louise responds that she will contact Her Majesty and request reinforcements. As she departs, Louise smirks with determination. She declares that this time, she will definitely not let him escape, directing her fury toward Roger and vowing that he should wait for her. As Deas stands there, his thoughts shift inward, focusing on a single word that echoes in his mind: the heart. Numbers and fragmented memories surface alongside his thoughts. After the regression, he realizes something important. He had been so consumed with avoiding the path of a typical demon, so focused on acting differently and controlling himself, that he had completely forgotten a crucial event. Before the regression, around this exact point in time, Draken discovered the heart of a certain mystic beast. After finding it, Draken absorbed the heart and gained overwhelming power. Power that drastically changed the balance of strength. A realization settles in. That power was the only thing Deas truly desired. Now reborn as a new demon king, Deas understands his current limitations. Dimensional interference is still heavily affecting him, restricting his true strength. If he were to fight Laos one-on-one under these conditions, especially with Laos being fully equipped with high-level gear, Deas knows the outcome would be uncertain. At best, he would barely manage to win. That would not be enough. To take revenge on the heroes, and to survive in this dimension, Deas comes to a decisive conclusion. In the end, he must increase his own power. With this plan forming clearly in his mind, Deas decides on his next move. He will send Louise to Ormus, to the place where the Tower of Beasts stands. There, 2 monsters will inevitably clash: the mad dog Louise Verft, and the demon king of beasts Draxen Doldov. While those two tear each other apart in brutal conflict, Deas will remain in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment. And when the battle ends, he will claim the prize for himself: the heart of the mystic beast. After Lower Frederick fused with Mana's phantom, the tower completed an upgrade. 2 new abilities were unlocked: remote activation of the top floor and an item transfer system that could send objects across distances. Soon after, a container wrapped in purple energy appeared near the emitter. A mechanical voice announced that an item had been transferred from a higher function within the tower. At the same time, on the highest balcony of the residence, Burge Diaz was speaking with Gordon. During the call, Burge sensed the disturbance in the tower and informed Gordon that something unusual had occurred. He temporarily entrusted the tower's management to him. Opening his status window, Burge ordered Gordon to deliver a container of senile powder to Princess Iman using the tower's transfer system. Moments later, the transfer activated. A portion of top-grade senile powder appeared. The powder was a refined potion containing strong spiritual energy and was an important material for forming powerful spirit contracts. Burge explained that it would greatly benefit the princess. When Princess Iman examined the powder, she was amazed by its purity and wondered if it came from the famous kingdom of Een. Gordon confirmed that the Demon King had personally acquired it and advised her to use it carefully. Burge then gave Gordon more instructions regarding other parts of the tower. On the fourth floor, which functioned as a prison, Princess Keed remained confined. Despite the cold stone surroundings, she looked calm. Burge ordered Gordon to train her in swordsmanship so she could fight at her full potential. When he returned, he planned to personally test her abilities in a fierce sparring match. Training soon began. During one clash, Keed attacked Gordon with determination, but he blocked her strike and coldly told her that she needed to land at least one successful hit before she could claim to stand against him. Next, Burge spoke about the first floor. A new facility had appeared there, and he ordered Gordon to establish the Hell Forge and have Lower reinforce it. When the dwarves saw the forge, they were overwhelmed with excitement. One dwarf rushed toward the massive furnace and examined it with shining eyes. The strange, glowing metal fascinated him, and he promised to forge equipment worthy of the Demon King. Burge then asked about the progress of the Pearl Orcs. Gordon reported that 3 tribes had already united, and their population had doubled. Their strength had grown enough to hunt most monsters in the Urgust Mountains. Burge approved the progress and ordered Gordon to continue guarding the tower until his return. Gordon promised not to disappoint him. After ending the call, Burge leapt from his position and landed on a nearby building. He reflected on how the tower's new functions now allowed him to manage it remotely. Just then, another call appeared. The caller was Hillen Cargill. Hillen reported that the conquest of the Golden Moon Summit had been completed. The Golden Moon Merchant Guild would now be jointly controlled by Ammon, the Black Knights and the Black Mages. He explained that support from a 10-star figure had helped transfer the guild leader's position to Hillen's son. After hearing the report, Burge gave a new order. Hillen was to relay information to Granada, and funds would soon be sent through the Merchant Guild. Granada was to use the money to purchase every elf slave across the continent. Hillen was stunned by the command. Burge explained that a con artist named Jettison might still be useful. If the man did not appear within a month, an assassin would eliminate him. Elsewhere, the shopkeeper Jason trembled in fear under a table, as Burge revealed that the same man had once tried to deceive Louise Wharft. Soon afterward, the shop was destroyed and reduced to ruins. Meanwhile, at the Holton Walk training grounds, warriors trained intensely, while Granada's subordinates watched through a screen. When Granada heard Burge's command to buy all elf slaves, he was shocked but agreed to obey. Deep inside, however, he felt conflicted about following the Demon King's orders. Nearby, his soldiers whispered among themselves. Some believed their captain had lost his mind after he began practicing elf swordsmanship based on advice from an old man. Eventually, several subordinates tried to flee. Granada immediately sensed them. Using magic, he summoned thick roots from the ground that restrained the vice-captain. Despite the protests from the others, Granada ignored them and continued focusing on the screen. When Hillen asked what was happening, Granada calmly replied that it was nothing. Hillen then mentioned that Burge planned to search for treasure, which confused Granada. The scene then shifted to the Ormeth Rainforest Kingdom. Princess Louise Wharft pushed through the dense jungle while her companions followed behind. A dwarf messenger reported that Ormeth officers had delivered an ultimatum ordering them to withdraw. Louise refused. She insisted that she had not yet found the person she was searching for. When reminded that some areas were forbidden, she looked toward the distant Beast Mountain, realizing even that place was restricted. Still, she continued forward confidently, believing no one would dare harm a dwarven princess. Her determination only strengthened when she remembered the dwarven princesses who had died 2 centuries earlier. Eventually, her gaze settled on a distant tower. Inside that tower, the Wolf Demon King raised his head after hearing that the dwarf princess was approaching Beast Mountain. He became alarmed. Deep beneath the volcanic magma lay the heart of the summoning beast, a powerful concentration of mana energy that could grant immense strength if absorbed. Since the excavation was almost finished, Louise's arrival was dangerous. He ordered his servants to stop her, but strictly forbade them from killing or seriously injuring her. However, the situation outside had already escalated. In the forest, Louise suddenly encountered a tall, muscular man blocking her path. He warned her that the territory belonged to the Demon King, and entering it could lead to death. The man was Max, the second Prince of Ormoth. Louise refused to retreat and demanded that he step aside. Annoyed by her stubbornness, Max remembered the Great War that had taken place 200 years earlier near the kingdom of Jaspin. Suddenly, more figures appeared and surrounded the princess and her group. Max ordered them to kill everyone and declared that their deaths would bring prosperity to Ormes. Louise raised her axe in fury as soldiers and hunting hounds attacked. At that moment, demonic creatures began rushing toward the battlefield. Inside the tower, the Wolf Demon King realized the truth. The Ormoth forces intended to kill the princess and blame him, which could start another massive war. He immediately sent demonic creatures to protect her. The forest turned chaotic as Max's forces slaughtered dwarf soldiers. A golden shield formed around Louise to protect her. Max mocked her defense, calling her a turtle hiding behind a shell. Suddenly, violent purple energy exploded in front of him, forcing him to step back in shock. A powerful purple aura spread across the battlefield as a cold voice echoed through the air, calmly stating that the Ormoth attack had never been part of his plans. Max realized that the presence before him was not a beast demon. Both he and the princess felt the overwhelming pressure. Burj Dias had arrived. With a faint, mocking smile, the Demon King looked over the battlefield and issued a chilling command to the Prince of Ormoth, activating a magical mask designed for facial recognition. He prepared for what would come next. The prince stared at Dias in shock and recognized him as a high-ranking demon. Without hesitation, he ordered his men to kill Princess Louise while he dealt with the demon himself. His subordinate immediately acknowledged the command, and together the soldiers advanced toward Princess Louise with lethal intent. Before they could reach her, terrified screams erupted from the prince's subordinates. The prince turned in disbelief and saw Princess Louise moving at the speed of light, cutting down his men one by one with effortless precision. In mere moments, they were slaughtered. Princess Louise stood amid the fallen, her fury blazing. A death glare flashed across her face as her voice rang out with unrestrained anger, commanding all to seal their eyes. As she screamed, an unbelievably terrifying power burst from her body. The atmosphere trembled beneath the crushing intensity of her aura. The air itself seemed to vibrate under the overwhelming force she released. Witnessing this, Max tried to remain calm, but fear crept into his heart. He wondered why anyone would be quick to discuss dwarves when the real problem was the raging princess before them. Her energy felt tangible, pressing down on everything in its path and suffocating the battlefield. At that very moment, a monstrous and suffocating aura erupted from the Demon King's body. A dark energy wrapped tightly around Max. Binding him in place, he struggled in shock, unable to move as the crushing pressure froze him where he stood. The force was overwhelming, leaving him trapped and helpless. In the next instant, Princess Louise flashed forward with unstoppable speed. With a single decisive strike, she sliced Max cleanly into two pieces. Without hesitation, she continued advancing. Her anger had not faded. It burned even stronger than before. She moved toward the remaining enemies without sparing a glance behind her, radiating fury and ready to attack anyone who dared stand in her way. The soldiers trembled at the sight of her. Fear gripped their hearts, and they began fleeing in every direction, desperate to escape her overwhelming presence. The sheer intensity of her power made it impossible for them to stand their ground. Amid the chaos, Princess Louise searched for the demonic energy that had filled the air moments earlier. She scanned the battlefield carefully, her sharp eyes seeking any trace of the dark aura that had suddenly disappeared. Meanwhile, several of Max's remaining soldiers gathered their courage and stepped forward. Anger and arrogance filled their voices as they condemned her for attacking the prince. Their accusations echoed across the battlefield, yet even as they spoke, they felt the terrifying energy radiating from her body. The air around her vibrated with power. Her expression hardened further. Her aura intensified as she declared that they had come to kill her first, and that she would send them to join their prince. Her voice rose with fury, and the ground beneath her feet trembled under the pressure of her unleashed strength. At that critical moment, the dwarf soldiers arrived. Without hesitation, they formed a defensive shield around the princess, determined to protect her and prevent anyone from approaching. Moving in perfect coordination, they established a tight formation. From within the shield, several soldiers surged forward alongside others, launching counterattacks against the advancing enemies. The forest erupted into chaos. Massive explosions echoed through the trees, shaking the ground as powerful attacks collided. Smoke and shockwaves tore through the surroundings, ripping across the battlefield. From a distance, the Demon King observed the destruction with calm, unreadable eyes, watching the fierce battle unfold. He quietly acknowledged that Louise would not die at this point. He resolved to let events proceed and prepared to set his main plan into motion. His gaze slowly lifted toward the towering structure ahead, known as the Tower of the Beast. As the scene shifted to the tower, a massive surge of energy radiated from it. The power was thick and overwhelming, making the very air tremble. Inside, the Beast King stood in fury, shouting at one of his subordinates. His anger echoed through the chamber. The subordinate hurriedly began reporting about the Demon King's magic. But before she could finish, the Beast King sharply interrupted her. He coldly declared that the magic did not originate from his family. He realized that another demon lord had sent demons into his territory. Judging by their strength, they could be elite demons of a higher rank or even beyond that. His expression darkened as his rage intensified. In his mind, he calculated the situation carefully. While the dwarf princess and Prince Ormes were clashing, other demon tribes were invading simultaneously. The timing was far too perfect. Concluding that he needed to investigate personally, he prepared to act. The scene returned to the forest as the Beast King arrived at the battlefield. His presence was heavy and commanding. Immediately, he demanded to know what had happened to the dwarf princess and the invading demon. One soldier attempted to respond, addressing him as Demon King, but before he could finish, another quickly explained that they had just arrived and that the prince had been surrounded by Ormes' soldiers. Hearing this, the Beast King's anger flared. His aura intensified as a troubling thought formed in his mind. He feared that if the same large-scale offensive from 200 years ago were repeated, he still lacked the skills to stop it. A beast soldier nervously reported that the princess had already been surrounded by Ormes' soldiers. He tried to save her, but before he could explain fully, the scene shifted again to Princess Louise on the battlefield. She was cutting down every soldier before her in a brutal and unstoppable assault. Not a single man could stand against her. Watching this terrifying display, her own soldiers cried out urgently for her to stop, warning that anything more would become pure slaughter. Yet her rage showed no sign of slowing. The scene returned to the beast soldier, who lowered his head and completed his report. The princess had resolved the situation on her own, leaving them unable to assist her. He apologized to the Beast King. The Beast King snapped in irritation, striking the soldier in anger and accusing him of causing confusion. The soldier immediately bowed and apologized repeatedly, trembling under his fury. Soon more soldiers arrived, accompanied by several powerful beasts. One hesitated before reporting that Prince Ormes' II had been killed by the dwarf princess. Another soldier then asked what should be done with the remaining Ormes warriors, clearly seeking the Beast King's permission before taking action. The Beast King fell silent, his expression dark and calculating. In his mind, he weighed the consequences carefully. Killing the men would make it easy for others to frame him for the prince's murder. Though it might earn quick magic points, kidnapping and murder carried very different consequences. Even though Ormes was a small country, a grieving king driven mad by his son's death could create serious complications. After considering the risks, the Beast King issued a firm order. The surviving Ormes warriors were to be sent alive. They needed to give proper statements so that he would not be falsely accused. His voice was cold and controlled, though tension lingered beneath it. Finally, he turned to the rest of his troops and demanded to know whether they had found the demon who had invaded his territory. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of what answer they could give under the weight of his commanding presence. The soldiers answered that they were still searching, their reply trailing off awkwardly. Hearing this, the Beast King grabbed his head in frustration. He called them pathetic, declaring that not only their heads but even their noses were useless. His anger was obvious, yet his expression soon shifted into deep thought. He reconsidered the situation and concluded that if it was a high-level demon specializing in stealth, it was no surprise his men could not find it. He narrowed his eyes, reflecting that it had been a long time since he had encountered a situation like this. He then activated a technique known as sensory super-maximization. This powerful method maximized the senses by concentrating magic directly into the sense organs. By mastering it, one could detect faint traces of stealth magic that would otherwise remain hidden. The Beast King focused intensely and spread his magic outward like an invisible web across the forest. After a moment he sensed it. There were traces of an unfamiliar demon. His expression darkened at the thought that this intruder might have chased the dwarf princess. Immediately, he turned to his soldiers and demanded to know which direction she had run. One soldier quickly pointed and said she had gone that way. Before the explanation was even complete, the Beast King vanished from sight, moving at incredible speed as he rushed forward. His furious voice roared through the forest as he cursed the Demon King. In a single terrifying realization, everything fell into place in his mind. His eyes widened as he understood the truth. The clash between the Dwarf Princess and Prince Ormes, even the exposure of magic, had all been part of a plan to lure him away from the volcano. Rage surged through him like wildfire. His aura flared violently as he charged ahead at tremendous speed. Heading straight toward the mountain, the ground cracked beneath his steps, and the wind howled around him as he moved. The scene shifted deep within the Beast King's territory. Inside a massive cave hidden near the volcano, numerous beast warriors guarded the area heavily. Bear demons carried materials in and out with urgency and discipline. The entire place felt like a secret operation in motion. The view moved deeper into the cave, toward the heart of Janu. The Demon King himself had already arrived at the hidden location. He stood before a massive pool of extraordinary lava and observed it carefully. The molten flow glowed unnaturally, radiating a strange and powerful energy. He noted thoughtfully that this was no ordinary lava. The energy of return was being transmitted there. No matter how tough Draxen had been, it would have been impossible for him to jump into it. He considered whether the lava was being secretly drained through construction, but decided he did not mind. As he spoke, dark energy rose around his body. Mysterious skills emerged as his power intensified. Flames swirled around him without causing harm. He calmly stated that the black flame dragon's scales could move even in lava. Just as he spoke, someone sensed his presence. A sharp and alert tiger demon immediately locked onto him and launched a full-force attack without hesitation. With his weapon infused with all his strength, he struck with deadly intent. The Demon King calmly raised one hand and stopped the attack effortlessly. The weapon could not move forward even an inch. Without appearing troubled, he remarked that it was inevitable a high-level demon would discover him at such distance. The tiger demon grew furious and bared his fangs, shouting for him to stop. Before he could react further, the Demon King coldly ordered him to come along. He dragged the tiger demon with him and leaped straight into the massive pool of lava. As they plunged into the burning molten depths, the tiger demon's screams echoed through the cavern. His body was completely destroyed, burned away without leaving a trace. The Demon King, however, remained unaffected. The black dragon scales covering his body protected him entirely from the lava's devastating heat. The molten fire slid over him as if it were nothing. He moved rapidly downward through the blazing depths, continuing his descent without slowing. As he sank deeper, he thought calmly about Draxen. After absorbing the heart of the beast in his previous life, his regenerative abilities had become incredibly strong. He had often wondered what kind of recovery power he had truly absorbed. A faint smile formed as he remembered. Far below in the depths, a phoenix appeared. Its presence radiated immense power even within the lava. The Demon King recalled that during his time as a Demon King cadet, the existence of the phoenix had been confirmed across multiple dimensions. Records described how the phoenix could transcend dimensions, ranging from divine beings to entities ruling only within their own realms as ultimate destroyers. The scale of its power varied greatly. However, one fact remained constant. Every demon lord who completely absorbed a phoenix became powerful enough to engrave their name in the history of the demon world. Quiet satisfaction settled on his face. In his mind, he thanked Draxen, because Draxen had absorbed the phoenix in his previous life. He could now stand there. The only strength he had ever envied would become his own in this life, and he intended to use it well. The Demon King stretched his hand forward. An overwhelmingly powerful light burst from his palm. The radiance was so intense it could be seen from a great distance, illuminating the sky and surrounding mountains. Seeing the blinding light from afar, the Beast King's expression twisted with shock and rage. He demanded to know who had discovered his phoenix. His thoughts raced as he considered whether it could be Burger Diaz, but he immediately rejected the idea, knowing that such a figure would never act without clear benefit. He continued rushing forward at incredible speed, analyzing the situation. Aside from the adjutant stationed above, there were no higher-level demons present. No newly risen demon lord should have been able to uncover this secret. There had been absolutely no carelessness in the security management. In an instant, he arrived at the cave entrance. The guards stammered about a demon, but he pushed past them and ordered everyone to stay back as he strode inside. Thinking quickly, he ruled out Yuger, who lacked the intelligence to plan such a scheme. He dismissed Riina of the Snow Demon tribe as well. since the phoenix carried a fire attribute that would be poisonous to her. That left only one possibility. He sharply turned to his soldiers and demanded to know if they were safe. One hurriedly explained that earlier the tiger had suddenly jumped into the lava. The Beast King snapped in disbelief, declaring it impossible. The trembling soldier continued, saying the tiger had claimed he was going to steal it. Another voice shouted that it was dangerous. From deep within the cave, immense light continued pouring outward, growing brighter and stronger by the second. The glow spread far beyond the cave, visible even at a great distance. From afar, several figures witnessed the extraordinary sight. Princess Louise Vert, Merchant Granada Hill, Cargill, and Princess Alina stood with their soldiers, all watching the radiant eruption in stunned silence. Meanwhile, the Beast King's fury reached its peak. He clenched his fist as his aura exploded around him. He roared with murderous intent, and within the blazing depths, the phoenix was revealed. Deep inside a vast forest, a strange sound echoed through the trees before silence returned. Moments later, Burj Diaz was seen lying unconscious on the ground. After some time, he slowly opened his eyes, confused about where he was. Several wild animals had gathered around him, quietly staring. As he tried to recall what happened, the memory of the phoenix returned. He had planned to store the phoenix's corpse in his subspace and take it to the tower, but before he could react, the phoenix's mana suddenly flowed into his body. Right after that, the volcano erupted and blasted him far away. Annoyed by the situation, Burj walked to a nearby stream to check himself. But the reflection in the water shocked him. The face staring back was completely different from what he expected. Meanwhile, far away in the hidden kingdom of Ormes, Princess Louise reported to Prince Jetson that the warriors of Ormes had bravely saved them from a subordinate of the Beast Demon King. However, the prince showed no pride. The warrior who died in that battle had been his own son. Furious and grieving, he immediately ordered the Heroes Guild to prepare a large expedition to defeat the Beast Demon King. Back in the forest, a holographic screen appeared as Hillen Cargill contacted Burj to deliver his report. Hillen was shocked by Burj's changed appearance, but Burj calmly confirmed his identity and told him to continue. Hillen explained that a massive hero expedition was already being prepared. Around 500 members, including 200 heroes, would attack the Tower of Beasts. The expedition would be led by the 10-star battle mage Rosalchant, with Balraf Disrode serving as vice commander. Hillen also revealed that some groups secretly did not want the Beast Demon King to die, because the tower was a valuable source of rare materials. After hearing everything, Burj ordered Hillen to join the expedition and personally kill the Beast Demon King, so his reputation among humans would rise even higher. Soon after the call ended, another report arrived from Gordon, informing Burj that the Beast Demon King Draxon had summoned several Demon Kings to the Tower of Beasts. In the tower itself, Draxon had already called Uger Belva, the Demon King of Indestructibility, and Reyna Soldian, the Demon King of Winters, and was waiting for the remaining guests. Realizing the situation was urgent, Burj transformed into his demon form and flew toward his tower. Suddenly, powerful heat erupted from his heart, and his wings turned into blazing phoenix wings. The phoenix's mana was still inside him. His speed increased uncontrollably as he shot through the sky like a comet and crashed into his tower's barrier before finally landing inside. After recovering, he confirmed his arrival, while Gordon prepared a portal to the Tower of Beasts. At the same time in Ormes, heroes gathered for the expedition. Many admired the famous mage Rosalchant, but she showed little interest in them. When Hillen arrived and greeted her, she responded with mocking confidence, while declaring that she would personally defeat the Beast Demon King. Hillen smiled politely, but inside his mind he had only one thought. The head of the Beast Demon King would ultimately belong to him. Gordon Diaz and Jason traveled through the portal to meet Draxon at the Tower of Beasts. Top floor, when they arrived, Draxon looked at them and acknowledged that Jason Kochmund and Burj Diaz had arrived on time, adding that he would explain the details inside. Once they moved inside, Diaz quietly thought to himself that they must not be late. Uger then addressed Draxon, asking what matter was so important that he had called an emergency meeting. Jason smiled calmly and mentioned that he had heard the heroes group had gathered in Ormes, wondering if the meeting was related to that situation. Hearing this, Draxon grew slightly angry. He responded that it seemed Jason already knew something, so he would speak frankly. He revealed that one of the Demon Kings gathered there had sent an AC-rank demon into his territory and stolen the Phoenix's corpse that he was about to absorb. Furthermore, that same culprit had caused the death of the second Prince of Ormus, and had triggered the current hero expedition. The other demon kings silently thought about the situation. They wondered whether Draxon had secretly been hiding a phoenix. They also considered that removing the spirit beast was foolish, but deliberately provoking the current hero expedition clearly showed an intention to kill Draxon. Draxon continued explaining that perhaps the same person had also killed the dwarf princess, and perhaps the goal was to provoke a total continent-wide offensive. He then declared that it seemed some of them were trying to eliminate him. However, he warned that he would not die alone. To kill that damn traitor, he announced that he would buy the black box key, shouting the declaration in anger. The story then revealed information about the black box inside the tower. It was a device that recorded all the movements of the Demon Kings. Originally, it had been created to analyze recorded problems and help plan better invasions in the future. However, the Demon Kings who followed demon orthodoxy considered such objects trivial and unnecessary. Moreover, using the device consumed a huge amount of demon energy points. Since the device also disappeared when the tower collapsed, most Demon Kings no longer paid any attention to it. Hearing this, Deas became troubled and thought about the consequences. The black box was something he had not even foreseen. If Draxon opened the black box in his tower, Deas would have no way out. Draxon then explained that opening the black box required the authorization of the Demon King, who owned that specific tower. He asked all the Demon Kings present to grant him permission. He added that if the culprit was among them, that person would surely oppose the request. Deas grew increasingly uneasy after hearing this. However, one by one, all the Demon Kings and the Demon Queen granted their authorization. Draxon acknowledged the approvals with satisfaction and announced that everyone had given their authorization. He said he would inform them of the results later and declared that the meeting would end there. The next moment, further details about the black box key were revealed. It was a single-use consumable item, costing 9,999,999 demon power points. Purchasing it required an enormous amount of demon power points. With Draxon about to face the hero's party, he would not risk his life by first investing such a huge number of demon points into a single key. However, if the hero expedition ended in failure and the situation stabilized, he would immediately purchase the key and open both Deas's and Jason's black boxes. After the meeting ended, Deas and Gordon returned to their tower. Once there, Deas began thinking about the situation. Before that moment arrived, he had to eliminate Draxon. He decided to quickly check the situation inside the tower before leaving. Gordon informed him that the preparations were already ready. Deas then decided that they would start checking from floor 1. Together, they moved to Burge Tower, floor 1. On that floor, Loger had created a massive magic cannon. Standing proudly on top of it, he excitedly began explaining his creation. He declared that this was the magic cannon created in the Forge of Hell. Named Hell's Catapult Mark I, he admired its majestic and beautiful shape, and proudly called it a masterpiece unlike anything he had ever seen in his life. He explained that thanks to the Hellforge, the weapon could perform attacks with 3 or more attributes. He had also created a mobile catapult carriage capable of moving freely across the terrain. The cannon used bullets made from condensed mana, which could grant different attributes. It also had the ability to draw mana from the air when running low. In addition, it included various functions such as local defense, focus shots, multi-target attacks, tracking evasion, rapid fire, and ballistic intelligence. Loger proudly declared it a unique and modern decisive battle weapon, something unprecedented in history. After hearing this long explanation, Deas quietly turned to Gordon and remarked that he had simply told Loger to make the weapon however he liked. However, he wondered whether that man was truly okay. Gordon replied that Loger might have lost his mind, but the weapon's performance was safe. He suggested that if Deas was still worried, he could always take back the Hell's Forge. Deas refused the suggestion and told Gordon to leave Loger alone. Instead, he wanted to see how far the man could go with his creations. As Deas and Gordon began walking away, Loger continued shouting excitedly, thanking the Demon King and promising to build bigger and stronger weapons. After leaving the first floor, the two moved on to the second floor. There, Keed was practicing swordsmanship. The moment she noticed Deas, she launched an attack toward him. Deas calmly blocked the strike and commented that nothing had changed. Keed confidently declared that the real battle was beginning. She immediately used the Jespin combat art, performing the technique Modified Waxing Moon. breaking the waning moon. However, Deas effortlessly blocked that attack as well. With a slight smirk, he acknowledged that she had improved a little but still needed much more training. Keed was shocked and wondered how her technique could fail so easily. With a counterattack from Deas, she was almost knocked unconscious. Afterward, Deas turned to Gordon and asked why Princess Keed was on floor 2. Gordon explained that Princess Ernan was currently preparing a summoning ritual on floor 4, so he had temporarily moved Princess Keed. Hearing this explanation, Deas was surprised. Meanwhile, on the 4th floor, Ernan was performing the summoning ritual. She activated the spirit Senial's octopus, used. Drawing upon her power, Ernan began reciting the summoning spell. She called upon the great spirit of water, guardian of water, bound by blood and soul. In the name of Ernan Hilderin, she wished to form a contract with the spirit. Soon after, the water guardian spirit appeared and connected with Ernan. As the connection formed, Ernan lost her balance and suddenly fell forward. At that exact moment, Deas appeared and caught her as she fell into his arms. With a small smile, he remarked that he had almost missed the show and praised her work. Ernan shyly laughed and said it was nothing. She explained that the success was thanks to Senial's dust, which had helped the Demon King obtain the result. Suddenly, Ernan unexpectedly said that she loved the Demon King. Deas was shocked. Immediately afterward, Ernan panicked and insisted that she had not said that. She begged him to believe her, explaining that even though it was her voice, she had not actually said anything herself. Then they realized the truth. The words had been spoken through her by the water spirit. Deas commented that she had summoned a very annoying spirit. The water spirit burst into laughter and jokingly said it was impossible before pretending to run away. The spirit was then introduced as the high-rank water spirit Naranyal. Her hobbies included reading romance novels, and her favorite genre was forbidden love. Naranyal cheerfully declared that she truly loved the Demon King. She excitedly pointed out that he had already noticed it, and began asking when the two of them would finally become boyfriend and girlfriend. Hearing this ridiculous comment, Ernan became extremely flustered and demanded to know what nonsense the spirit was talking about.